Welcome to the Warning Track Power Hour. I am Dr. Andrew Scan. He is Dr. Michael Werman, Esquire. On today's show, we will continue our four-part series on the NFL quarterbacks for the 24 season. We'll be talking about the NFC North and the NFC East before next week getting into the AFC quarterbacks. We'll talk a little bit more about the Kansas City Royals and their wild card race still alive. But we'll start today's show the third week in a row with the Olympics. Another crazy week. Some big come from behind victories. Some crazy, yeah, disqualifications and weird losses, weird events around the whole series of the Olympics. Mike, what in the last week have you been watching, and what have you found most interesting from the last week?
I've been watching a variety of things. I had been watching a lot of volleyball, beach and non-beach. Unfortunately, in the single elimination, the Americans haven't been doing so well in beach volleyball. The women's teams, both of them are out now. Both lost in the quarterfinals, I think. And at least one of the men's teams, the one of the Chase Budinger, is out. So there's not. You think of the beach volleyball as kind of an American-dominated event because it's sort of an American, seen as like an American sport. It was, I think it started out in the Atlanta Olympics in '96. But the men and women's indoor teams are both doing very well, and both, it seems like, are in good shape to get medals. The men have to beat Poland, or if they lose against Poland in the semis, if they win that bronze medal game, they'll win a medal. And that was something that
More importantly, though,
I'd win my bet. Yes, that's the most important thing. But yeah, so I've been watching some of those. I've been watching some of the track and field. The 100 meters was really exciting. With
what was the time, the difference in the first and second?
0.0005 seconds. 1,000 seconds. The waiting time was 9.78 4, and the second was 9.789.
Yes, yeah.
And Lyles won that one over his Jamaican counterpart, and American Fred Curley got third too. So like it was first and third for the U.S. in that one, and it was also first and third today, Tuesday, in the 1,500 meters, which was unexpected, where Cole Hawker and Yard Nagusa got first and third in the men's 1,500 meters, defeating Jakob Ingebrigtsen, the favorite, the kind of overwhelming and brash favorite in the race. And also the second place guy was Josh Kerr from Great Britain, who got second, but he was seen as the other guy that could maybe win the race, and it was Hawker who came from behind in a thrilling fashion. So I was excited to watch those races. The men and women have done a lot better in track than they did in swimming, when they kind of sucked, at least by American standards. They didn't win a lot of medals, and that kind of affected the medal count. And now the USA is kind of pulling ahead again overall. A lot of silvers and bronzes early, but now they're getting some more golds. So what have you found the most exciting or interesting in the Olympics so far?
I too watch some of the volleyball games, the more of the indoor side, I guess. And yeah, a lot of the swimming and some of the track and field events too. I missed the 100 meter. I had to watch it later and on replay, at least anyway. That 4x400 mixed uh uh, foot race one was nuts too. Like another, crazy come from behind victory. Was it a Dutch
Yeah,
runner,
Femke
uh,
Bol.
hurdler, I guess mostly, right?
Maybe related to Manute Bol. Yes.
Yeah, just that unbelievable final stretch to make up an enormous amount of ground at the very end. It was crazy to watch, and yeah, that was a fun race to see too. But uh, after the American team had set a world record in their heat in the prelim side of things, which is pretty crazy to set a world record earlier in the event and then lose the gold
Yeah.
medal. It seems crazy too, doesn't it?
In some cases the relay you sometimes will get a world record because usually on a relay there aren't just the four people who run the relay, there are sometimes six or seven people on the relay team that can be in those early rounds. And then you think,
Yeah,
well, if those people that were in early, they ran fast enough and they broke a world record, maybe they can also stay in late. So there's people fighting for spots. Like
yeah,
the so maybe that is sometimes a reason, unless you don't usually see world records broken in the like this individual sprint events, or any of the individual events in prelims. But I guess you don't want to peak too soon. Uh,
right.
but it seems like the U.S. is peaking at the right time now, pulling ahead. The basketball, we didn't talk about basketball. U.S. men, they beat Brazil by 35 today, something
Healthy
like that.
margin.
Yeah.
Yes, up in the 120s too, where none of the other teams were anywhere close to that.
Yeah, and some of their play, like Steph Curry's had a terrible Olympics so far. He hasn't been very good. Some
Yeah,
of the best players have been mediocre, and they're
we're
still.
we're not even played like Tatum
Yeah.
in the early rounds, right?
Yeah,
Where
Halliburton didn't play, Tatum didn't play.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it seems like this is another
they're
dream
a
team
very
so
deep
far.
team, so they don't, and not anybody in particular has to be great at any given moment.
Yeah,
That's the
but
advantage of having a super deep team. Right?
this problem is it's a single elimination tournament. It's only one game, so having the best team doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. It's not like they have the NBA finals where they have best of seven, where they can have off game here and there and still win. So I didn't think the U.S. would play as well as they had when I made my initial bet. The field, I'm not feeling very good about that. I would feel much better if I were in your shoes, Andrew, of having picking them to win the gold. But that's who I think is probably going to come out right now. But you never know. The Olympics are a little crazy. There's still a lot over the next few days uh, left. Any events you're looking forward to that you're excited about? Breaking perhaps. Uh,
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
I
So
wanted to beat you to it because I hate it. I don't want to watch the B-boy
um,
breaking final or whatever they're calling it.
I'm not looking forward to that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm mostly just looking forward. I'm curious to see what Noah Lyles does in the 200, which
Yeah.
will be will happen between the time we record this and air it then on YouTube or the podcast networks. But I would like to see what happens with that one at least anyway too. But
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to that. I want to see what happens with the men's volleyball team. I think the women are favored for gold again, or at least it seems like very like. But the men were sort of in a kind of an upset position to be here. They're kind of an old team. Most of them are kind of dads with kids on that team, so it's kind of a fun uh, thing to watch.
did
Um,
you see the like at least photos of the Turkish pistol shooter?
oh, he was awesome. Yeah, yeah.
That's yeah.
I think the whole thing should involve people like that. It shouldn't have the fancy goggles and sight things. I think it should be naked eye, or at
Yeah.
least maybe corrective lenses that aren't you know spy tech heavy. And yeah, the Turkish guy who just
Yeah.
kind of leaned back and just had his hand in his pocket, and he probably has a cigarette normally while he's
Yeah.
doing it, and he got second. He's the European champion usually. So like yeah, he like nobody. He's the only person that does it like that, and yeah, it's impressive.
Yeah. Great. And there were so many great lines about it too. Like some people thought maybe he was like a retired hitman who just sort of showed up as like, maybe I'll just go ahead and compete in the Olympics right now and then, gets a silver medal.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool though. It looked cool.
yeah, he was cool. Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
that's one of those fun things about the
Yusuf
Olympics.
Dikec
Yeah.
or Dikec.
That is one of those fun things about the Olympics, though. Is like you never know what's going to be interesting from it. It could be anything from any
Yeah,
event and any part of it. Modern pentathlon still hasn't happened yet. Are you gonna tune in for that?
I watched some of the other equestrian events. I watched the cross country equestrian event today, or at least part of the team final, and that was kind of
Yeah,
fun. It had happened a few days ago, but I was watching with my daughter because she always wants to watch the horse stuff. So
yeah,
I didn't. It was kind of fun to watch, but it was. I don't know if I'll watch Modern Pentathlon or not, but I
yeah.
might catch some of the highlights. Uh,
Decathlon or heptathlons? You like watching those, like the sort of all around
Sometimes I do.
athletic
I
achievements?
I usually only care if there's an American involved. Uh,
Yeah.
Kind of like the pole vault. There's a world record uh pole vault performance. Did you see? Did you hear about that?
No.
It's a guy from Sweden, but he's actually from the United States and he's lived in the United States. Armand Duplantis. He went to LSU. He's from like Louisiana, but his mom is Swedish, so he's on the Swedish national team.
Okay.
But he set the world record in the pole vault. So it was over, well over 20 feet. Um,
Great.
but yeah, so um, but I was just looking at him because he after he won the gold medal, he posed in the same way that Yusuf Dikec posed in his shooting. So that was his celebration.
Nice.
Was the kind of hand on hip, the relaxed but fierce shooting position.
Great.
But yeah, there's still a lot of things left. A lot of boxing, a lot of taekwondo. Uh, you can watch any of those finals?
Probably not. I might catch some random stuff. Yeah, I never know. Like a lot of times I'll watch like the evening primetime sort of recap show. And you don't know what they're gonna put on there as the what they thought were the most important events of the day. So I may catch some of that, but uh yeah, I don't plan on specifically tune in to any of the like the wrestling or boxing matches. So how about
Did you
you?
watch any of the gymnastics with Simone Biles winning gold again? But then they were kind of disappointing on the individual apparatus event finals. One's silver medal for
Yeah.
Biles.
I
She won
only
the
caught
vault. She won the vault,
highlights
but
of some of it, yeah.
yeah, they kind of were all. I thought it was a fairly sloppy Olympics in terms of execution. It was not as um I think the difficulty was very high that they did, and that's why they got so many points. But there was a lot of, I thought, sloppiness on landings and things like that. Uh,
Yeah.
so it was not the most graceful and beautiful of
Well, in the competition, I thought you
gymnastics.
were meaning like I thought you were gonna say like that you were saying it was sloppy in like the execution of the like how the events were run or something is what I thought you were about to
No,
say.
no, this is how like in like
Yeah.
just for gymnastics, I mean, like
Yeah.
they seem to have a lot of like bad landings and like out of bounds penalties and like falls on the balance beam and
Yeah.
like they were doing very difficult routines, which is the reason they won is because their difficulty was much higher than a lot of the other teams.
Yeah.
But it looked a little, I thought, it wasn't like Simone Biles this time was not as good as she was 4 years ago or the 4 years before that, but she was still better because she was competing at this higher level of difficulty on all of her starts basically, and that's kind of how the U.S. women were doing. But it wasn't like they've really mastered, I think, how to win at the Olympics, but it wasn't as visually pleasing as some of the other ones. I didn't think. Um, just
Yeah.
because in some ways I like as a layperson I don't see how difficult one difficult skill is, how much more difficult that difficult skill is versus another one, but I can see like, oh, they didn't land very well or they
Yeah.
stepped out of bounds there. I could see that that was um not as good, but I think it's easier to tell
Yeah.
with like diving because they rate, you can see like each dive is rated like a 3.7 or 3.4, or 3.1, like how difficult it is while they're doing it, so you can like kind of like see it going through. In gymnastics you can't
Yeah.
see everything that's like, oh, this is a 3 point, this is a this level of skill
The
But
seventh move of this sequence is this level of difficulty.
yeah,
They don't show that directly
yeah,
on the
it
screen
just
in
kind of
this one.
yeah. So it's harder to follow as a layperson, I think. But
Did you catch any of like the synchronized diving?
I saw the Chinese win, and I saw the um was it the Canadian team, I think, that got
A Mexican team that did really well in
yeah.
part that I had seen, at least anyway,
And
which was
Mexico
just
does
some
Mexico
random.
Mexico usually does pretty well in diving because of like
Yeah,
the cliff diving tradition in
yeah,
Acapulco and places like that.
yeah.
But apparently, they were talking about how the Mexican Diving Federation basically has no money now because like the Mexican Olympic Federation did not want to give them any money anymore or something. So they're like doing.
Oh,
But yeah, Mexican divers are actually usually fairly good. That's one of their best events in the Olympics. Um, but
I-
yeah, do you want to move on from the Olympics to
sure. Well,
baseball?
maybe real quickly before we do move on, though, there's still some pretty big events left. Like we sort of somewhat expect, like Noah Lyles to win the 200 meter.
Yeah.
Uh, U.S. men's and women's basketball teams are at least somewhat likely to win golds. The
Mhm.
women's soccer team, potentially. There are lots of other sort of other events that Americans may win in. Currently, the U.S. team has 26 gold medals. Do you think that they're going to threaten that 40 and a half number that you and I have bets on around this? You have the under, I have the over.
I I
US
like
gold. Are
I
you
like
worried now, or are you still confident that they're
I'm
going to cap out before that 40
I'm
and a
more
half?
worried than I was. I am more confident. I'm still fairly confident they won't make it. I'd be happy if they did, really, but I'd lose the bet. But
Yeah,
um, it was because the swimming wasn't very good by American standards that they were a lot lower, and I think they've the track and field have kind of made up for that. They've gotten more medals and gold medals and things that nobody really expected them to, because I don't know if really people thought that Lyles was going to win the 100 meters, or
yeah,
if no, certainly the 1500 was not expected, but on the men's side.
right.
So like some of those, I think there's been a couple of surprises. Like in the pool, there were no surprise, like good surprises in the pool. There were some
Yeah,
disappointment surprises, like, oh, this person didn't medal, or this person didn't even make the final, or something like that. But there was no, oh, this American who was the second one coming in ended up winning the gold medal over the first American who got silver. There was none of that
yeah,
in this Olympics. It was all like, okay, heavy favorite Katie Ledecky wins her long races where she was the slight underdog. She didn't win that race.
right.
It was like, and the men didn't really have anything. Um, like it was so this was the week one of the weaker I think one of the weaker uh swim meets, if you want to call it that, for the US in recent memory. But
Yeah,
so that's an event where so many medals can be won, and like so you see like Australia had more gold medals than the United States did for most of the first week of the Olympics, because the Australians did really well in the pool. um
yeah.
and that just
There's
gives
so
so
many
many
events.
medals.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know
And then
because
that
everyone.
second weekend is dominated a lot by the by track and field, which is a similar number of a lot of medals up for grabs.
But it's something also that I think it seems more different to me than it does swimming does. Swimming's just like, oh, we swim in slightly different distances, slightly different ways to get there. But at least
Yeah,
you have in track and
yeah.
field, you have, okay, there's some jumping over things that's different from just running, and there's throwing things, and then
Instead
there's
of
like,
swimming on your stomach, now you're on your back, so it's totally
yeah,
different.
yeah.
Yes.
I think there should be a backwards walking, or I think that would be just as good, or backwards running. That would be just
But
as good as the
what about
race
like
walk.
distance cartwheeling, something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, three-legged races, something
Wow.
Tay-Sachs, something that you would have at a kids' carnival. But I think there's a lot of room there. But I like watching the swimming too. But it's something that it seems like there's It's also like judo and taekwondo. There's so many medals too because every slight difference in weight gets its own medal.
Yeah,
But it's not the same people competing in all the events. It's one person in each weight class, so it's a little different.
yeah.
But you can still rack up lots of medals in things like that. And like the USA used to rack up a lot of medals in stuff like boxing, but I think the USA is usually lucky to get like one or two gold medals in boxing. Even in
And frequently they're somewhat surprising actually when they do win.
Yeah, it seems like the boxing medals usually come from some Asian country or some like former Soviet republic. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's not it's a weird and Olympic boxing is very different from professional boxing, which is also kind of just on the on is waning around the world. You think that ultimate fighting should be an Olympic sport?
I mean, no, I mean it's just the mixed versions of all of those individual,
Yeah.
right? I mean there are a lot of the disciplines that go into like the mixed martial arts, you know, are Olympic events. So it wouldn't be that big of a stretch to include at least some of that in an Olympic event, but I don't know why you would add just combinations of those in as
MMA,
individual
I
events.
just was looking up. It was in the 2023 African Games,
No,
actually, which occurred in 2024, the most recent African Games. So there was
okay.
MMA
So
there.
maybe they're laying the groundwork to add it, but
Yeah.
I don't know what the point would be in adding just like blending events that already are in the Olympics together.
You'd have to add like some more protective headwear and things like that to MMA stuff. Like they don't really, and it seems like it goes against the appeal of those.
You don't
Maybe
think there don't tend to be like knockouts in Olympic boxing though, are there typically?
no, because they also have headgear.
They do wear headgear, yeah.
And for a while it was like a weird point system, like where like even barely touching somebody would get a point. Like it would just like a reward like jabbers rather than like big punches. Like it wasn't like
Right.
the Olympic. I mean the modern boxing judges, which like give 10 points to the winner and 9 points usually to the loser of the round. They
Unless there's a
just
huge gap between the two, then it might be a
yeah
10-8 round or something instead of a
yeah,
10-9.
or they'll have like a penalty on both sides or something and do it that
Yeah.
way. But
But
so
that's how MMA is scored also, if you
oh
watch
yeah.
any of that too. So it is similar scoring
Mhm.
to boxing, I guess, at least anyway.
Yeah. How's your bets are going pretty well though, Dr. Scaff, in the Olympics. Mine have
Yeah,
not been successful
yeah,
so far.
especially helped with the in golf, I think, where you and I had picked competing Americans where your choice was doing quite well very early
But
on, and
Leonard Schauffele
then
he was doing great, but then
and then my choice ended up
Scotty Scheffler
pulling it
pulled
out
out
at
of the
the
end,
end and
nine
winning.
under
It
par
was,
in last round to win. So that was
yeah,
a long odds too. Both of those were pretty long odds
yeah.
comparatively
You were looking
to
good early, but yeah, then it ended up going my way, which is pretty cool though. And out of all of the you know golfers that we could have chosen from, that we did have two leaders at different times in the tournament though. So
yeah. We knew what we
yeah,
were doing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if we know what we're
So
doing by the end of the Olympics
yeah,
with our
I think
bets.
yeah. So will we know all the results for our next episode? I think we will, right? Is
Yeah,
that
we will. It's by Tuesday. Tuesday we'll
yeah?
air next Tuesday. I mean, we'll record next Tuesday, and the Olympics are over on Sunday.
If it
So
wraps, yes, Sunday, right? Is that right?
Sunday, yeah, Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
Yeah, so you and I are going to be head to head on a couple of events here with the USA versus the field in the men's basketball, and then the gold medal tonals. So those will be yeah the definers and how you and I do on our competition against each other anyway.
Yeah, it's true. And yeah, some of the other events didn't end the way we wanted, like tennis. Our guys were out early. Our doubles teams.
And then
Uh,
and also our least favorite
Yeah, Novak Djokovic won.
men's tennis competitor
Yeah.
ended up
And it
winning.
was like a 7-6, 7-6. So it was like one of those things where like that's not really a win. You should have, there's not really set wins. Those are just tiebreaker wins. And it's
Yeah,
a best of three. So it's kind of it's kind of a raw deal. I don't know.
yeah.
I just don't like Djokovic.
Oh well.
He's the Eastern European strongman of tennis, and I don't care for him.
But how do you really feel about Djokovic, Mike?
Not my favorite. Um,
Yeah.
but speaking of not maybe our favorites not doing so well. Recently, the Royals have maybe fallen. They've been up and down, and over the last couple of days, however, they've been playing against their maybe their biggest one of their biggest rivals to having a wild card spot in the playoffs, and that's the Boston Red Sox. And the Royals have lost two straight now to Boston after winning two out of was it 3 out of 4 against Detroit or 2 out of 3 against Detroit?
3 out of 4 against Detroit after having swept the White
Swept
Sox.
the Sox.
They'd gone 6-1 on the road trip, and then
Now they're 0-2 at home. They
starting out
almost
into
came
the
back
second
tonight.
game.
They've had a lot of almost comebacks. It seems like they were down 6-3, and then they lost 6-5 tonight to the Red Sox with the Lugo start not going so well. They lost a Singer start the night before, so it's up to Reagan's tomorrow for the Royals to salvage anything from the series. But they're only one and a half. They're only one half game up in the third with the third wild card right now. So it's kind of touch and go. Hopefully the Royals can do a little bit better. Um, what do you think is if it's hard to say what's wrong with the Royals since they're doing so well. They're 11 games over 500. They're 63 and 52, I think, right now. But I know you have some theories about what's wrong with the Royals and why they've lost some of these close games. Um, what do the Royals need to do to improve and to kind of shore up these weaknesses that they have?
One of the biggest things that we've talked about repeatedly here is bullpen usage, and it seems to be quite amazing that a team could make the same mistake, not just inning to inning, but then in usage, like having a reliever finish an inning successfully and then come in to start the next inning for no reason, then not doing well, and then asking the next guy up to do the same thing in the following the following inning, but then repeating those mistakes 3 games later with the exact same players in the same situations with Zerpa and Stratton is shocking. Like at how just like bold and stupid some of these moves can be. I don't understand how someone could make that same mistake that's very obvious before it was made the first time, which is to make it like essentially 4 times in within a week stretch using the same players, even not like even with different guys. It's the same 2 guys that were done both times and back to back in games where they both failed miserably in the same scenarios. It's really maddening to watch. And then also some of the lineups that are set still don't make sense. It seems like the addition of Paul DeYoung, who has been quite successful in the little bit of game time that he has seen. He's driven in a couple runs at least already and affected some of the games he's been in. But it seems like he's just taking time away from Adam Frazier, which is okay. But it's not. They're not. Leaving him in more often. You
To get into a
know,
rhythm or something, yeah.
so it's like I don't think anybody benefits from this. So it's like if they're going to devote Frazier to like pinch hitting and defensive replacement roles, then he probably shouldn't get a random start anymore. Like he should just be in that role unless someone gets injured and then he can move up. Otherwise, he should be just relegated to that role. So he's still getting some playing time, but then it comes at DeYoung's expense, who maybe is the more interesting player at this point in time that may actually be more helpful for the team down the stretch. It is really unfortunate to see them struggling against their most immediate competitor in Boston. So like the one team they actually need to beat is Boston, and they have been behind in both games that they played so far. the point where they were like, trying to catch up but unsuccessful because they just get dig too big of a hole, basically.
Yeah.
Do you think they have a chance to salvage tomorrow? It should be Reagan's on the mound, I believe.
Yeah, Reagan's is
Um,
going to pitch. So it's been, it also made it's been frustrating because it's been the Royals one, two, and three best pitchers that have played in this series, and it
well, they're
hasn't
now they're in like a weird order though, too. They're no longer in the
one,
same
two,
order.
three. It's kind of
Now
three,
it's
one, two the way it's
three
been.
or 2-1 maybe, or even three
Yeah,
one two. Yeah, I'm not
yeah.
sure.
But it hasn't even been the Red Sox best pitchers going up against them. So like the Royals haven't been really matching up against it's been the Royals best. They should have had the advantage of the first two games and they lost both those games. And I don't know who's going up against Reagan's um tomorrow. Uh do you have that?
I can have it in just a brief moment here. It looks like Cutter Crawford.
Okay, so Crawford's one of the top ones for the I think
Yeah,
for
and
the
the Royals I don't think did very well against him in his last start against KC. So that
yeah.
doesn't bode well, at least offhand. So I guess maybe the Royals have seen him pitch before, so maybe they will have learned something from the first time. But I would not be holding my breath. They don't
Yeah.
seem to be preparing very well in a lot of these games, as they don't seem to be scoring many runs early in the games as of late. So it seems like other teams seem to be out preparing for them than they are preparing for their opponents. So that's
Yeah, here
another unfortunate thing with a young team that you would hope that they would, be encouraged to be more prepared for some of these matchups.
Yeah, so it's I think this is a team still that hasn't it's not used to doing well and winning, so I don't think they're used to playing good teams, so maybe they just don't quite know how to um come out strong against a good team. I mean, maybe they're I don't know, maybe they're just a little sluggish, maybe they're a little feel the pressure on in the way that they didn't think they would early in the season. So maybe they're pressing a little bit. Like for most of this game, it seemed like the top three in the lineup, Massey, Witt, and Pasquantino, each had hits, but then nobody else did until the eighth inning, basically. So I think the lineup, from top to bottom, or at least in a more, some of the bottom of the lineup needs to play better against these good teams because it can't just be the Witt and Pasquatch show
Yeah, for sure.
or Salvy's show, depending. Uh,
Yeah. I do think it seems like earlier in the season, like the best that Sal played was when Massey was hitting behind him. And I don't know why they have not gone back to that. It seems like they're determined to find someone to fit into that,
leadoff spot, yeah.
whatever they determine to be their, yeah, sort of more traditional leadoff hitter. And they just have not found someone to, like, get 3 hits a game. So I still don't know why they wouldn't just move those guys up one slot and just have Witt lead off. I don't know why you would worry about that.
Yeah. I think DeYoung maybe could
But they haven't
fit into
tried
that
that
leadoff
yet. So
spot, yeah.
it's and
Massey
I
did okay
and I think
tonight. Yeah.
but it almost seems like you would, if they want to use like the traditional Royals thing where they want to go left, right, left, right, left, right, all the way down the lineup to try to like force pitching changes later. I don't know how important that really is. I don't think it seems to be that important. The Royals seem to think it is. So it seems like rather than just move everybody up and then go, instead of going left, right, go right, left with Bobby Witt,
Yeah.
Sasquatch 2, Sal 3. You're still maintaining the right, left, right. And then
Hmm.
just have Massey hit fourth instead of fifth. I mean, it's like it's right there. They haven't tried it. I mean, they've been trying all these other crazy lineups and nothing's really landed. I don't know why they just haven't done the simplest.
I
Just
think they
move
just
those guys up one.
they want Witt to have people possibly on base when he is batting.
But it can
And
only be one guy on base. And it only happens the first time through the lineup when that's a scenario.
yeah,
And they
I
don't
know.
do anything in the first inning anyway. They don't do anything in the second inning. They don't do anything in the third inning. They only score runs in like the seventh, eighth, or ninth anyway. It seems like It's the only time they can score is late in the game against their, other team's worst relievers is like when they manage to figure out how to hit all of a sudden. So it's you know, and this does sound like it's just me complaining all the time, but the Royals are 11 games over 500, but I think our expectations have risen so much with the team as they've managed to maintain this winning mentality, at least through the course of the season. Maybe mostly against the White Sox, though, which
Yeah.
was what our discovery was last
Uh-huh.
week.
Yeah, right now, if you look at the American League Central standings, uh, all the teams are on losing streaks. Cleveland's lost 3 in a row, so the Royals are still only 5.5 behind Cleveland. The Twins have lost one, Detroit has lost one, and now the Chicago has lost 21 in a row. They've tied the American League record for most losses in a row, which I believe was at the Baltimore Orioles set in like the 80 early like the late
89,
80s
89 Orioles, I think. Yeah.
when they lost like their first 21 games.
The first 21
Yeah,
games.
yeah.
Yeah. What a terrible way to
I
start a year.
remember that from when we were kids. I remember
Oh,
that
yeah.
how bad they were. And so this is Chicago is that bad. Um, and so
They
they're playing Oakland.
they are up 4-1 right now in the seventh, but they have found lots of ways to lose games. Do you think they'll drop this one? Or
I think they're
do
gonna
you think
win it.
they'll hold on?
I think they're gonna win it.
So I guess if they do lose today, their stretch, if it goes to the 25th loss, which would set the major league record, would be at home against intra-city rival Chicago Cubs
Mm.
in White Sox Park, whatever it's called now.
Guaranteed, is it guaranteed
Uh,
rate
is it
field?
guaranteed rate or is it, I think it may be something else now too. But it's also a, fireworks day. Would that
Mhm.
be most fitting to be seemingly celebrating a major league record, although it would be a utility record? Would you still think it would be fitting though, Mike, to have fireworks after a major league record
If they're
25th
already
consecutive loss?
scheduled, it's not like it's celebrated. It's an unrelated. It's simply to bring people into the ballpark because everybody loves fireworks.
So
But it's
it could
kind of
be a
irrelevant.
well-attended game then
Yeah,
too, right?
it's
So
not like the I think the funniest fireworks have been was it when Mark Quinn finally walked after a 200 consecutive at bats or something like that of not walking and
not trying to
they
walk. Yeah.
trying to
That's
walk.
pretty good. That
Yeah,
was funny. Yeah, that they
yeah,
actually thought about it and then and set off the fireworks for base on balls. It's fantastic stuff.
yeah. So I think unless the fireworks were all kind of like duds or something like that, maybe that would be appropriate. But I don't think they're going to break that record. I think they're going to win against the A's tonight. That's my hope. And this is going to go long enough that we're going to be able to watch the end of it probably. Since we
We
have
can
so much
we can
more
check
to
back in.
talk
Yeah.
about. This is going to be a Warner Trek 2 hour power hour, just like our last week's episode. I think was since we're moving on to football now. Unless you have any more baseball to talk about, um,
Do it.
there's been some football news in that for the 49ers, Brandon Ayuk, who wants a new contract. It seems like now maybe he is going to get traded, kind of Tyreek Hill style, by the 49ers to some other team before the season starts. I think the Patriots are involved as possible suitors, the Browns and the Steelers, all AFC opponents of the Chiefs potentially. Which team would you most like to see Ayuk go to? Which team do you think he would be the best fit for?
It seems like the best fit would almost have to be Pittsburgh, with actually having one or two options at quarterback that may be useful. But it seems like just in how the NFL seems to work, like they when a wide receiver gets traded, it's not necessarily to the best team or the best opportunity. I think it'd be most amusing if he ends up in New England. I think you're going to agree with me there. Is that what you were
I
thinking
definitely
too?
want him to go to New England. I think that's the funniest destination. Because also, it's like he's leaving one of the premier teams of the league to go right now to what is one of the worst after the post Bill Belichick, uh, and rookie quarterback perhaps. New England Patriots with Drake May or Jacoby Brissett as quarterback,
Mhm.
and not really a whole lot of offensive firepower there. Like you said in Pittsburgh, yeah, he's joining a pretty good offensive team. With George Pickens, got the great running game. There's
Yeah.
some good good pieces there. Cleveland, the same thing. Mark Cooper, Nick Chubb if he comes back. If Deshaun Watson is able to, if he can't play with Ayuk and Cooper, he's really kind of washed up, it seems. So,
Yeah.
and that's a really tough division, and Cleveland has playoff aspirations. They were in the playoffs last year. Pittsburgh was in the playoffs last year. Those are two AFC North teams that maybe that could put them over the top in the division, you think? So I think
Yeah.
having him in the AFC East with what is pretty cut and dried, it seems like the worst team in the AFC East, and maybe outside a couple of teams, one of the worst teams in the AFC. That would be kind of a funny fitting place for him to go. Uh,
Or you'd think you would just be like, never mind. Don't trade me. I'll
just wait one more year till you're a free
yeah.
agent, and then go
And
for
you
the
go wherever you want, right? Rather
yeah,
than, being at the mercy of what deal your team can work out for you. That seems
yeah,
riskier, a lot riskier.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that, especially if that's one of the possibilities. Like realistically, if he knows that New England is a possibility, he doesn't want to go there, maybe he should just, you know, withdraw his trade request just
Mhm.
so it can't happen, Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's not a whole lot of Chiefs news other than we talked just before we went on the air, the potential assassination threat against Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce at the Morgan Wallen concert by some disgruntled Illinois fan. I don't know if he was a Packers fan or a Bears fan. He was not a Chiefs supporter. He was upset about the Chiefs winning, and that was the reason. And they delayed the concert, and all sorts of things happened. But we
And this
also
was in Kansas City
is
too,
in Kansas
right?
City. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, we also the Harrison Butker contract news that Butker is now the highest paid kicker in the NFL. Do you think it was wise to spend that much money on Butker? Is he are kickers? You seem to. I think we both think that kickers are fairly fungible. Uh, but Butker has been one of
Hmm.
the best. He's been really solid in the playoffs.
Hmm.
So and it seems like maybe the Chiefs have a little bit of money in the salary cap to spend on, and they don't really have people to spend it on. So maybe why not spend a little bit on Butker, who's been a
Yeah.
solid kicker and I don't know if you want to call him a model citizen given his uh, some of his right-wing political views, but he hasn't
Mhm.
gotten any car accidents or punched anybody or something like that. So
Man. Yeah, I mean, it seems like his role may be minimized on kickoffs this coming season too, with the new kickoff rule changes.
Mhm.
It seemed a little strange to, spend money there if you know the guy's role could be somewhat smaller this year from what he has been doing in the past. So, especially if you know what was valued heavily, not just on the scoring points, but was also to like not allow returns to happen. And
Yeah,
that's been rule changed out of existence essentially. So it's a little odd to seems like now to make that deal, but
yeah. You,
it's
you
some of
also
this may be
wonder
more about
how.
rewarding past history and more than what you're more than paying what you're expecting to get out of him from the next year and beyond with what the contract was.
I think you also wonder how effective he's going to be at kicking with a new holder, Matt Ariza, who, it took it. I suppose it took Tommy Townsend a while to get to be a great holder for Butker, at least according to some observers. And who knows whether Ariza can do it well or not. He's been, it seems like as a punter, he's been, kicking 75-yard punts routinely in training camp. So he's really good at that. I don't. It's another thing. Maybe he also could be a kickoff specialist. Is he? Can he kick off? He was a kicker, I think, in college too. So, maybe you do some stuff. But you also don't. I don't know if he's a bigger guy than Butker. I think, but I think still ideally, you want maybe the kickoff specialist to be a a non-specialist player. You want him to be
Yeah,
Justin Reed or Louis Rees-Zammit or somebody that can be more physical and get involved in the tackle in a
yeah,
way you don't want Butker to. You don't want Ariza to, because they're not used to that, and it's not usually their job is to. It's like you want you want your designated hitter to come from the uh the field players, not from the pitching staff usually, unless you have Shohei Ohtani. Uh, so it's one of those things, I think. But yeah, it's hard to say what Bucker's new role will be in the new kickoff here. Did you watch any of the Hall of Fame game, the first preseason game?
I didn't see any of it. I heard about like about the kicking specifically, though. I don't. Did you watch it?
I didn't really see any of it. I saw a couple of
Yeah,
highlights of the game, but like they seemed all pretty uneventful. The returns, none of them were
yeah.
in the game
It
was
said
rained
there
out.
were. Yeah, so they didn't play. They didn't complete it, but they said there were eight kickoffs. I think nothing went past the 31, I
Yeah,
believe.
there's only
And I
one
think there
touchback.
was one touchback, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah,
So it's limiting the number of touchbacks and it's making it a play, but it's hard to say whether that's going to be a big play, frequent big play or not.
yeah.
But
So nothing, eventful, I guess, is be
yeah,
what you would say. But there were returns. So there were a large number of returns, right? Like
yeah,
nearly 80% returns.
yeah,
Or had a return play, which is, you know, basically the flipped ratio from what it was probably last
yeah.
year.
It was just kicking in the end zone and touchback.
Yeah,
It was not a must see TV. Uh,
right.
so speaking of must see TV, should we move on to our quarterback? Uh, we do have one additional quarterback to add to the list from last week. Our last team that we talked about, the Carolina Panthers in the NFC South. We mentioned there are three quarterbacks at that time: Bryce Young, Andy Dalton, and Jack Plummer. No relation to Jake Plummer, Jack Plummer. Uh, but the Panthers over the last couple of days, they did sign a fourth quarterback to join that quarterback room, and that is a Jake Luton, 6'6", 28-year-old who had played for Idaho, Ventura Community College in Oregon. He was the 2026th round pick by Jacksonville, and he started 3 games in that 2020 season, replacing Minshew in the COVID season. Since then he's bounced around from the Jaguars to the Seahawks to the Dolphins, back to the Jags to the Saints to the Panthers, back to the Saints, now back to the Panthers. He's mainly been a practice squad guy. He only has 473 career yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 54.5 quarterback rating. So maybe that says, well, maybe he's the third quarterback instead of Plummer, who was an undrafted free agent out of Louisville. Maybe they think of him as somebody who they want a third quarterback with some experience or at least a little bit of age. I don't know. Or maybe he's just a camp body. But that's Jake Luton. Have you done any research on Jake Luton?
They have not added him in Spot Track though, so
Okay, so
they
we
must
don't have
Spot Track so far does not think
no
much of
contact.
this signing, I guess. So
Well, the rest of our quarterbacks will be on Spot Track, and I think you want to start with the NFC North.
yes, so we're still working our way west to east.
I think so. Yeah, I remember last year we did do alphabetically, but I think the first time we did it, we did west to east, and so
Yeah. So this is a throwback
this is a throwback to
west to east.
our seasoned viewers of Warren Track Tower, our seasoned listeners will
Yes.
remember that first quarterback preview season, and say, oh yeah, they went from west to east. I wonder why they gave that up. But today we will go west to east again. And so the westernmost team in the NFC North is the home of now vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, Governor Tim Walz, not Waltz, as I was thinking it might be Tim Walz, who is the new vice presidential nominee, and we'll see how he does for the in the election and potential debates. But I'm sure he's a big Vikings fan, but I'm not sure anybody is a big fan of the quarterbacks of the Vikings. There's some potential there, but there's also some maybe squandered potential with a lot of these guys. Speaking
But
of
but experience though.
and
There's
it's
some experience.
experience, and in a way, this is the most experienced and maybe the most competitive and maybe the strongest quarterback room from top to bottom, at least in the NFC North for sure. There's a lot of maybe weaknesses, it seems like, among the quarterbacks in the North after, especially once you get past the starters. But not with the Vikings, who they don't have a clear-cut starter. Right now, their starter and quarterback is Sam Darnold, 27 years old, 6'3", famously the number 3 overall pick by the Jets in 2018 out of USC. He played 3 years with the Jets. He was with Carolina 2 years. Last year, he was with the 49ers. This is his first year with Minnesota. His career record as a starter is 21-35. He has a career 59.7 completion percentage, which isn't so great. You want to be, at least in today's NFL, comfortably above 60%. Hopefully around 65. It seems like most of the quarterbacks are now. 63 touchdowns, 56 interceptions, 78.3 rating. So not terribly good. He started one game last year with the 49ers. He lost to the Rams, who had Carson Wentz, I believe, starting that game. It was the last game of the season, where both teams, I think, were assured of playoff position. He did throw and run for a touchdown, however. So how long is he going to be the starter? Is there still something there? Could he maybe, if he plays well, maybe he could keep the starting job longer than maybe people think. I think that's an interesting, you know, interesting idea to have. Maybe this is Baker Mayfield kind of had a rebirth. The famous who was drafted number 1 overall that season. I think a lot of people thought Darnold was maybe the better prospect than Mayfield was. Mayfield had the better maybe pedigree coming out of Oklahoma and the Heisman Trophy, but I think people thought Darnold might be the best prospect that year. Turns out that Josh Allen was the best prospect that year, and Lamar Jackson was close behind, but they were picked after both Darnold and Mayfield. He's also famous with the Josh Rosen year. He was really been the biggest bust of those guys. I don't think he's in the league anymore, Rosen. But so do you think there's still something there with Darnold? What do you think of Samuel L. Darnold? I don't know if his middle name's L or not, but
We'll just assume it is. But yeah, I mean, it really just it's going to be like, yeah, which quarterback clicks well, or does Darnold click well with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, right? So it's really just going to come down to that, isn't it?
yeah, it's Samuel Richard Darnold, R. Darnold.
The left and right,
Yeah, left and
as
right.
the L
Yeah,
and R. Yeah,
I don't want to get into it.
the full opposite of Samuel L.
Or yeah,
Jackson.
supposedly with certain countries that mix up the L's and the R's in their languages when they speak English. But I won't get into that. But did you know? Have you seen the Dwight Schrute comparisons to Samuel Darnold?
Oh,
He does look a little bit like Dwight Schrute.
does he appreciate the beats and the Battlestar Galactica?
I'm
Like,
sure he does.
yeah.
Yeah, if you look up, there are some memes about Dwight Schrute. If you look up Dwight Schrute, Sam Darnold, you'll see a few images of him looking like Dwight. But I'm not sure. I think Darnold still has a chance of being a good quarterback, and I'm not so sure exactly how great the first round draft pick of the Minnesota Vikings will be. He's still very young, so I think maybe Darnold could be the starter for most of this year, if not the whole season, if they do fairly well. Have a sort of Alex Smith kind of renaissance in the way that, everybody thought Smith was a bust until several years into his career. He was a
Mm.
highly drafted player from now the Pac-12, or what was once the Pac-12. Um, I don't think when Smith was drafted, Utah was in the Pac-12 yet. I think they were still Mountain West. But
Probably.
um, yeah, the what is how much money is Sam Darnold making this year? He's the highest paid quarterback, I believe, on the roster.
Yeah, and it's not excessive by any means. Yeah, a mere 5 million for this season.
5 million.
And he's still only 27, so he's not. I mean, it's not that long ago that he was
He's been in the
getting
year 6 years.
drafted. So yeah,
This is actually his seventh season that he's going to be in the league, which is, he's only a couple years old. He's the same age as Stetson Bennett. Uh,
now,
now, yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yeah, coming into his first year, right? Or
yeah.
second year. Yeah.
He's only a year older than one of the rookie, the second year quarterback on the Vikings. We'll talk about. Uh,
Yes.
he's not that old. But his and so like the Vikings also drafted JJ McCarthy, number 10 overall, which is a little bit of a surprise. They actually traded up a little bit to get him. Um, I think the Vikings, of course, last year had Kirk Cousins and are trying to replace Cousins, so they brought Darnold in, and they needed a quarterback, and they decided to go up and get JJ McCarthy, 21 years old, 6'3", like Darnold, number 10 overall pick by the Vikings from Michigan. Most notably, of course, he won the national championship at Michigan. He wasn't really, though, asked to do a whole lot in Jim Harbaugh's run-heavy offense. He did lead his team to a 15-0 record this year, but in 15 games, he only threw for 2,630 yards, so less than 200 yards a game. But 19 touchdowns, 4 interceptions as a senior, so good touchdown to interception ratio. 74.2 completion percentage, so very high completion percentage. He actually maybe had a little bit better season as a junior, where he threw for 20 touchdowns, only 3 picks. But he had a 27-1 record as a starting quarterback at Michigan, which I believe is an NCAA record for best winning percentage among as a start, as at least maybe recent record as starting quarterback. So he was really, really good at Michigan. But he did, yes, like I said, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. And in the NFL, quarterbacks are asked to do a lot more than they are usually in college, especially. So it's hard to say. Harbaugh himself was a quarterback, so maybe he's good at developing quarterbacks, but his team, you know, didn't really use him that much. He just, handed the ball off and let the guys, let the running backs take care of things mostly. So it's hard to say how good McCarthy is going to be, but he's still only 21, so he's a lot younger than some of the other quarterbacks. He's younger than, we'll mention Caleb Williams. He's uh, almost 2 years younger than Caleb Williams. He's same almost. He's about 2 years younger than Jaden Daniels as well. So he's somebody who maybe still has a lot of upside to him.
Winning the national championship gives you a little more flexibility and ability to try to break into the NFL a little earlier, I guess, too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Good for him.
yeah. That's McCarthy. He just signed his sort of standard 10th overall pick. What's he making this year?
Just shy of 4 million for this year
Okay,
for the
so a little
team.
less than Darnold. But the quarterbacks in general, probably for the Vikings, aren't making a whole lot. They're probably paying their quarterbacks. Well, I guess Jordan Love hasn't hit his new contract yet, so they're
Right.
there's some of the lowest salaries here in the league. I guess the Bears haven't hit their big numbers yet either. They're going to be low. So really, it's only the Lions who are paying quarterbacks
Yeah,
much of it, seems like, out of that
yeah,
division.
Minnesota is in the bottom quarter. Yeah, 26th in total QB salary as a team. So
As a
yeah,
team, yeah.
26 out of 32.
What is Green Bay?
Green Bay moved up quite a bit because I think Jordan Love isn't the full contract isn't ballooned yet. I think he's getting paid something like 20 million this year, so they're
Okay.
at 13th.
Okay. They're a little higher
Yeah.
then.
But yeah, it's 22 million, 22.5 million for Green Bay. Minnesota's only 12 million,
Okay.
so $10 million savings. Um, a discount, basically.
Mhm.
They've got a lot of youth,
A lot of
uh,
youth and a lot of
in upside on their long-term look, at least anyway, with McCarthy and
and they
a,
have
little, a bit of a veteran, but like doesn't have all the mileage maybe as some of the other veterans do.
yeah.
So,
They still have two
but
other
at a
guys.
big discount for price.
Yeah, two other guys on the roster. I'm not sure if he's the third quarterback and gonna be the fourth quarterback. I'll mention Jaron Hall. He's 26 years old. This is only his second year in the league. He's already 26, but he's from BYU, so he probably had a Mormon mission. So a lot of the BYU guys are a little bit older coming out of Brigham Young. Uh, he's 2023 fifth round pick for BYU. He was actually the first black quarterback to start for BYU. The Church of Latter-day Saints has a very interesting history with African Americans and black people in general. But first black quarterback to start for BYU, the former backup to Zach Wilson. As a senior in 2022, Jaron Hall passed for over 3,100 yards, 31 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So more yards and touchdowns, of course, than McCarthy had in his um, season, playing in similar competition. It's like Big 12 versus Big 10. He also ran for 3 touchdowns. A 16-8 record as a starter at BYU. He also started 2 games last season for the Vikings, but he didn't finish either game. One of them was he got a concussion very early on, and I believe that's when Joshua Dobbs came in. He also had a halftime benching as well. His stats last year, he only was 13 for 20 for 168 yards, 1 interception, no touchdowns, 70.4 rating. So he got into a couple of games last year. Um, Fifth round pick, so maybe a project, but he's surely been supplanted as the project by McCarthy, and he's not that young either. He's already 26, so he's he's maybe on the outside looking in, maybe a practice squad guy, because there's also another third quarterback. Um,
By salary, he's definitely the project. Yeah,
yeah,
'cause he's just under 1 million, and the guy you're going to talk about next is over 2 million.
who he is.
It's a
Okay, I
good,
think
it is a good experience.
Nick Mullins, uh, 29 years old, 6'1", 2017 undrafted free agent from Southern Miss. One of the maybe the second most successful quarterback from Southern Miss after one Brett Favre, who was, of course, had some interesting adventures in Mississippi over the last few years with his uh, COVID schemes and things like that. But Mullins most famously spent 4 seasons with San Francisco. Then he's bounced around to the Eagles, the Browns, the Raiders, and the Vikings. He's actually been with Minnesota for 3 seasons now. Were you aware that he'd been there so long?
Well, and we would have covered two of them, and I did not remember either of
Yeah.
the
He
names
started
after
3 games last year for the Vikings. He was 5-15 for
Yeah.
his career as a starter, mostly for San Francisco. Over the years, he's passed for more than 6,000 yards, 34 touchdowns, 31 interceptions, 88.1 quarterback rating, which I was surprised at. That was pretty high. That's
Not
10
bad.
points, 10 points higher than Darnold's quarterback rating. Although he didn't play most of his games in the famously quarterback friendly um, Kyle Shanahan system. Um,
Yeah.
so the question is maybe what do we do with Mullins or Jaron Hall? As a third quarterback, do we keep both of them? Do we keep Hall on the practice squad? Can Mullins? I don't know. So maybe you think Mullins might even be the backup right now ahead of McCarthy, depending on where McCarthy's development might be.
It's
He's somebody.
possible.
Maybe he's somebody that if Darnold gets injured during the game, you put Mullins in and maybe wait for McCarthy to be have him prepare for the next game rather than coming into the game immediately, something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
strategically, that would make a lot of sense, especially early in the season if Mullins is the official backup.
yeah,
You would think that maybe they would just plan on having McCarthy have like a Patrick Mahomes season and just watch. until maybe like the last game of the season if
Yeah.
they are in a position to not need.
Yeah, because Mahomes was also the
Yeah.
10th overall pick. You might remember.
So basically the same guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Potentially at this point, sure.
yeah, potentially. Yeah, you never know. You never know. So the Vikings, I think from top to bottom, have a decent, for not having a great star quarterback, I think they're fairly set for present and future. I could even see them sneaking into the playoffs because they have a pretty good team around, that aren't the quarterbacks. And you never know with, Darnold or McCarthy and also with the rest of the division, as we'll talk about, they're one, if they're like, so if the Vikings starter goes down, their
Mhm.
backup is probably going to be better than the other team's backups if their starters go down, as we'll talk about in the next few minutes.
One of as we saw like in the last several seasons, I know we had seen how many quarterbacks actually got snaps last year, and it was like 50s,
I think it was
number
six.
somewhere in
I
that
think it was
area, or
66. I think
like
that
it was
snaps.
in the 50s, like not that far into the season, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it was
yeah.
like maybe the halfway point. We'd already seen like an extra 25
The
quarterbacks
Vikings had at least
besides the
four.
starters. So
Yeah, the Vikings had at least four different quarterbacks to start games. So,
yeah,
maybe that's also why they have so many options that are seen as potentially starter material. Unlike, down to the Green Bay Packers, I think that's Green Bay's a little bit further west, I believe, than Chicago is, just given the shape of the of Lake
that's how I
Michigan.
had them too. So
Of
it's
Lake
we're
Michigan.
with the same thought process at least anyway.
So the Packers don't have a much. It seems like, at least after judging from last year's results, have a much maybe brighter star as their starting quarterback, and that's Jordan Love, who's 25. He'll be 26 in November. 6'4", first round pick in 2020 from Utah State, where he was compared famously to Patrick Mahomes. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 3 seasons, except for one start against the Chiefs in 2021, where Aaron Rodgers, vaccine denier that he is, came up with COVID. Last year, Love was 9-8 as a starter. His first year starting, 64% completion percentage, 32 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, almost 4,200 yards passing. He really came on in the second half of the season. Perhaps, maybe even he's the next great Packers quarterback after Favre and Rodgers. He went 1-1 in the playoffs, defeating Dallas in the wild card game where he had a big game, and then they lost to the 49ers in San Francisco, where he had 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a 24-21 loss. So he's had, um, you know, some real success his first year as a starter. And I think both of us, me especially, I thought he was going to be a bust, but so far that hasn't proven to be the case. But maybe it's also because he wasn't thrown into the fire so early. He was given a chance to sit and wait and develop. Maybe he didn't need 3 years, but getting um, a year or two to sit, that made a lot of. I think that really helped Jordan Love.
Yeah, and I mean he was a legit quarterback, on a playoff team last season. So that's not, yeah, not a
He
bad
he
trajectory.
had a
And
good
even
game
though it took
against
a
the
while to get there.
Chiefs.
Yeah.
Yeah, they beat the Chiefs with him as their starter. It looked good in that game. But I think after Love, though, we have a few questions, and this is maybe a place where you think somebody like Ryan Tannehill or a solid backup, um, somebody who could be a starter, maybe in the right situation, should come in. But right now, the Packers backup is Sean Clifford, who's now 26. He's only in his second season. Um, 6'2", fifth-round pick from Penn State. Yeah, he was a long-time starter at Penn State. 32-14 record as a starter. 24 touchdowns, 7 interceptions as a senior in 2022. He has completed one pass in the NFL last year. So for completing one pass, what do you think his quarterback rating is? He's completed one pass.
Well, it should be pretty high, right? Because part of it is a completion percentage, at least anyway.
Mhm.
So, but I guess if he's thrown a lot of incomplete passes, it could be, what else? That's got to be at least in the 70s, you would think he's completed a pass.
It's 118 is his quarterback rating.
Oh, okay. Oh, I
He
thought we were gonna
completed.
say he's like he was like 1 for 7
No,
and threw 3 interceptions,
I don't
so
know
it's
how. I don't.
actually
Yeah,
3.
yeah, yeah. One. He has one completed pass, uh, but it was for 37 yards. So that's
Well, that's
why
pretty good, yeah.
his yards per attempt is very high, and that
'Cause
has
I
led.
mean, I think completion percentage may just directly be added
And he's one
to
for
the
one.
to
He
the
only threw one pass.
equation.
He only threw one pass and he completed it.
So it may be 100 QB. The rating may be 100 plus whatever the ratio, the yards per attempt number is. May make up 18 points actually. So that may be where it
Wait,
lands.
yeah, 118.7 is his quarterback rating.
Yeah.
So should he be the starter? You might ask over Jordan Love. So maybe the Packers are enamored by this and say, "Wow, we have this guy, Sean Clifford." But I don't think anybody who watched Sean Clifford play in college thought he was a great
Hmm.
quarterback. He was serviceable. So why not? Is he so? The question is he going to be the backup? He's only thrown one pass. He has one more. He has more experience than the third quarterback we have um, in Green Bay. So it's a little bit strange. Why not get a veteran there? What if Love gets hurt? Do we want Sean Clifford to lead the Green Bay Packers, or do we want the Michael Pratt, the third quarterback, to start? 6'2". He'll be 23 in September, the end of September. 2024 seventh round pick from Tulane. He's a 4-year starter at Tulane. Maybe he's the next Brock Purdy, 4-year college starter, seventh round draft pick. Career 90 touchdowns, that's 26 interceptions. He had a 21-3 record as a starter his past 2 years. In the last 2 seasons, 49 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Also fairly mobile with 15 rushing touchdowns the last 2 years. But the question is, again, is this a full quarterback room, or is it? It seems like it's missing. Like you think Jordan Love, he's still a young quarterback. Maybe you want an older, savvier veteran behind him. He's got
Yeah.
two younger guys behind him.
Not
What's
threatening for the role of the starter,
no?
but there just in case, just to hold, keep the chip going in the right direction, basically. Right?
Yeah. So I don't quite know what's going on with oops, drop something here. What's going on with the Packers? Because you'd think they would want, since they think, I think they think of themselves as playoff contenders, why not have a backup quarterback that has some experience in case um Love gets hurt, or also just to kind of keep Love's development going. Why not bring in Wayne Gabbert or Ryan
Yeah.
Tannehill or somebody that could be that kind of thing. But right now it's a little strange to me, I think.
Yeah, like I think we mentioned, yeah, last week. Yeah, Tannehill, Brian Hoyer, Blaine Gabbert, AJ McCarron, Matt Barkley, Trevor Simeon. All these guys are all available.
Yeah.
So yeah, it seems strange that you wouldn't bring in somebody that's at least has a little experience. Hopefully, he's been on a roster for quite some time. Just maybe somebody else that can give some pointers to Jordan Love along the way. But I mean, it just does seem to fit with the coaching and general manager decisions there in Green Bay. It does fit that they wouldn't add the veteran presence, though, right?
Yeah,
It seems like they aim for like a non-traditional sort of concept, but it does seem like if Jordan Love were to be injured early, I don't know how you finish the season and be okay with the outcome. Like you want to be a playoff team regardless, and I
yeah,
don't
you
know
only
if
have
you're
so
going to be able to
many
do that.
chances to make the playoffs, and the idea is, well, we have if you even if you think Love is the only, you're not going to find anybody as good as Love, but if Love is injured and maybe out 6 to 8 weeks, but he's back for the playoffs, maybe if you have somebody that can even tread water for a few weeks, because I think a lot of people are predicting Detroit to win the division because of how they did last year. But I think Green Bay has a very good shot at winning the division if they stay healthy. But if they don't stay healthy, you still think, well, maybe they're a playoff team in the NFC, and can they at least go? Can they win 9, 10 games? Maybe if Love misses a few weeks here and there. I think if they start Clifford or Pratt, those are guaranteed losses, I think, basically.
And their defense was pretty good, but not like top of the league, I don't believe. So it looks like their salary cap structure is very heavily towards the defensive side. I think four of their top six paid players are defensive players. So they did pick up Josh Jacobs, I guess, for
Yeah,
as a running back. So
Raiders.
like
Yeah.
maybe they're expecting to run the ball excessively if Love is out. So it's not
But what do you like? Every team's just going to stack the line, and they're not going to be able to.
because you're not even worried about the threat of a pass anymore. So
Yeah,
it yeah turns a multi-dimensional offense into one note basically. So it's pretty obvious what they'd be doing.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm questioning what's going on in Green Bay with their quarterback. I'm doing the same thing a little bit with what's going on in Chicago. But at least Chicago has a few more options than Green Bay. Um, Chicago was also a team that wasn't terrible last year with Justin Fields. They didn't make the playoffs, but they ended up getting the number one overall draft pick in Caleb Williams, which, most times when you get a number one pick, it's because your team has been really, really terrible. And this is kind of what happened with Bryce Young and what happened with Trevor Lawrence, and they get drafted onto terrible teams, and they have to Peyton Manning, many years ago, they get drafted onto really bad teams, and they have to turn those teams around. Joe Burrow, things like that. But
and it takes time too, and sometimes a lot of suffering.
yeah, but so Williams is
Right.
going on not to a terrible team, but to a mediocre team. Um,
Yeah.
and Caleb Williams, not as big as maybe you might expect for really high. He was probably the biggest hyped quarterback, at least since Trevor Lawrence, maybe since as a number one prospect, maybe since Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. He's been really hyped. He's only 6'1", 23 in November, so he's not young either coming out like
Hmm.
JJ McCarthy is, or what Mahomes was, or what Jordan Love was. He was drafted. He's only 20. He's only 3 years older than um, Williams. He was about a year younger than Williams when he came out. Um, he played for Oklahoma in 2021. Last two seasons at USC. Followed Lincoln Riley uh, from Oklahoma to USC. He had replaced Spencer Rattler. We mentioned Rattler when we transferred to South Carolina. Now he's on the Saints as one of the backups. Fifth round draft pick this past year. Says 2022 Heisman winner, the 2024 number one overall pick, biggest hype prospect for a while. He had a stronger season in 22 when he won the Heisman than he did in 2023, but he still had a very solid season. 68.6 completion percentage, 30 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, 3,300 plus yards, 11 rushing touchdowns, but he only had 142 rushing yards, which was far fewer than previous seasons. So maybe the question is, was he just coasting this past year, trying to save himself for the NFL? It seems like maybe. He's been, of course, compared to Patrick Mahomes as the next kind of Mahomes type of quarterback who can run and throw, and he has all the crazy arm angles and things like that, which is a lot of hype for Williams. It remains to be seen whether he's going to be able to live up to that. But he has been penciled in as the starter already in Chicago, and there's no real great backup behind him in case Williams either struggles coming out of the gate or gets injured. It's a little bit like what's going on in Green Bay, but at least that Love has a good season under his belt. We don't know that about Williams. What do you think about Caleb Williams, Andrew?
Yeah, it's a big unknown until he actually starts. And yeah, they decided not to give him any snaps in their first preseason game, which was the Hall of Fame game on Thursday of last week. So it seems a little strange that you wouldn't at least get to see him for even a minute, or even just to take a couple snaps, even just to hand it off and then just go take a seat, just to like get him at least a minute or two, right? of game experience against other players who are expected to be NFL players. So I don't know. It's all hype, and like you have to see if he can take some of the shots too. 'Cause he's going to get hit. He probably didn't get hit nearly as much in college as he will against NFL
Yeah.
defenses. So you can have a lot of hype around somebody, and you just don't know how healthy they're going to be able to stay. And that's maybe the biggest thing in the NFL is avoiding injuries and seeing what you can do to, play through some of those to lesser injuries too. So I don't know that we've seen any of that or have that expectation that he's going to be able to handle it yet until, he gets a couple of games under him and, you know, we'll have to
Yeah.
just have to see. So
Yeah.
I don't know that they should expect anything. And you probably, as a Bears fan, should probably if they have the same record that they had last year, that would be considered good because they've now taken a step back in quarterback development. Fields already had a few years. Now we're going back to year zero again. So if they do, the same number of wins they had last year, that's maybe a huge success.
Yeah, I think they're 7-10 last year. So if you think Williams can lead them to 7-10, but I think the expectations in Chicago there are playoffs and possibly
It's ridiculous.
more.
That's ridiculous. I would
And
say.
and
Is that
behind
you would
Williams,
think too, or
I
do you
think
think they're a playoff team too?
it's the NFC, so you don't know, but I think they play in the best division in the NFC since there are two teams that are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, I think, in the division.
Well,
The Patriots and the Lions.
seemingly emerging
Hmm.
teams who
Young
have,
teams, yeah.
yeah,
The Lions, I think, were the
and they have decent defenses already.
yeah. The
So
Packers and
it's
Lions are both pretty young. The
where the Bears have traditionally been a big defense and basically no quarterback, like in
yeah,
the history of the franchise, has been
they did bring in Keenan Allen. They
really
got Roma
okay.
Dunze. They got some, you know, they got some new guys. They had some, offensive weapons. They brought in, I think, DeAndre Swift now is on the Bears, but
Yeah,
still, I think you have to think of them as the third best team in the division at best. And you still have Minnesota, who is a perennial playoff team. They don't have Cousins anymore, but they still have a solid core. Uh,
probably the best wide receiver here,
yeah,
at
Justin
least in the
Jefferson.
division,
Yeah.
maybe not, maybe even in the conference. So possibly even the league, depending on health. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great combo to have. Even if your quarterback's just okay, having great receivers can certainly help,
Mhm.
your team win games.
But if Williams goes down, it seems like they're as ill prepared for having a second a sort of stopgap or a kind of
Yeah.
band-aid over the situation than that the Packers are, because they don't, it's all sort of journeyman at best small college quarterbacks. None of these were uh hyped players. There are stories of quarterbacks like Kurt Warner, um, you know, becoming, the big star, out of Northern Iowa and the Arena League and things like that. But that's few and far between. Most of the good quarterbacks in the league are blue chip prospects, and that's why you draft quarterbacks in the first round. And you know,
Yeah.
but behind Caleb Williams, well, you have Brett Rippon. His uncle was a good quarterback, Mark Rippon. At least he won a Super Bowl. Um, but Brett Rippon, he's 28 years old now, 6'2", 2019 undrafted free agent from Boise State. He spent his first 4 seasons with the Broncos. Since then, he's been with the Rams, the Seahawks, the Jets, and the Bears. Is he the primary backup? He's
Yeah.
played he played most of the Hall of Fame game. He looked good in the Hall of Fame game, but he started 4 games in his career. One last year with the Rams. The others were with Denver. 2-2 record, 4 touchdowns, 9 picks, a 58.9 rating. And is he the veteran? He's also the veteran on the team.
Yeah.
And he's only 28 and he's barely played. He's not Andy Dalton or somebody like that. At least you have behind, you know,
Yeah. I think he's
Bryce.
he's basically Blaine Gabbert though. I don't know that he's really any different there. And we
Well,
considered him
Gabbert was a a
sort of
first
a
round draft pick.
journeyman.
He was a
Yeah.
first round draft pick. He started for several years. He's journeyman, but he spent multiple years as a starter. He went to the
Yeah.
AFC Championship game. No wait, that was excuse me, that was Blake Bortles. I always get Blaine Gabbert and Blake
Yes.
confused.
They
But
are not they're not the same person actually.
he was a hyped prospect at one point, a top 10 pick, whereas Rippon wasn't even drafted. So like he's
Yeah.
same thing for
He has made some appearances and he's played a bit.
yeah, but all of the Bears quarterbacks behind Williams are undrafted free agents. Right?
That's
We have the number one pick and then undrafted free agent. We have nothing in between,
yeah.
and that's a little concerning, I think. Um,
Yeah.
you,
I mean I would think they're slightly ahead of Green Bay in backups, at least
well, they
anyway.
have three, and I think you could say Rippon is maybe more seasoned than any of the Packers backups, but
Yeah.
Bajan actually played some last year too. Tyson
Yes.
Bajan, their
And that
third.
and that may be what gives them just a slight edge over Green Bay's backups.
Yeah,
Or they're in case of emergency scenarios, right?
yeah. At least, but you can say at least Green Bay's backups were drafted, and they weren't journeyman. Like all these guys were you know Tyson Bagent, though he was from Division II, Shepherd University. He did win the Harlan Hill Trophy in 2021, which is the sort of Division II Heisman. He passed for the most touchdown passes in NCAA history in any division, 159 over his career, 6'3", but he's mainly a pocket passer. Only two rush. He did have two rushing touchdowns for Chicago though last year, so he was a scrambler because he's running for his life mostly. I think he started 4 games last year for the Bears, 66 completion percentage, 859 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 71.4 rating. Is he the backup maybe? Do you think he's the backup over Rippon? Is it Tyson
They do have
Bagent?
the same number of starts. I find that shocking though. Like they
Yeah.
each have 4 starts. But Agents all came last year and Rippins are spread out across what, 5 years is that what it was?
Yeah. Rippon he's been for he's not 2019, so this is his gonna be his 6th year in the league. So he's played 5 years in the league. So four
Yeah,
starts.
so 4 starts spread across 5 seasons.
Yeah.
And Ep Agent has the same number of starts, having only been on
One
the
season.
last year and wasn't expected to play at all,
Yeah.
but did. So he just had more opportunity, maybe. But yeah, maybe he's the go-to in the scenario that Williams, can't play
And
or
he's only 23. He's the same age almost
struggles.
as Caleb Williams. So he's another. They have also a young backup, another young backup in Austin Reed, 24 years old, 6'1". He's bounced around a lot too in college. Former Southern Illinois Saluki, West Florida Argonaut, and Western Kentucky Hilltopper. 2024 undrafted free agent. He passed for more than 8,000 yards and 71 touchdowns, so only 22 interceptions his last 2 seasons at WKU. Do you remember who he succeeded as starting quarterback at Western Kentucky? Um, he threw so Austin Reed threw 71 touchdowns in 2 seasons. His predecessor threw, I believe, 62 touchdowns in 1 season at Western Kentucky. And that
Uh,
is, of course, Bailey Zappi was his predecessor there, and Zappi's been seems like he's the odd man out right now in New England with Brissett coming in and 2 drafted quarterbacks coming in. Not and we'll talk about Drake May, but also not Eric Milton. He played for the Twins, but Joe Milton, I believe, from Tennessee. Um, but Austin Reed, he won Division II championship at West Florida in 2019. So he seems like more like a camp body probably, but who knows? He's a winner. He's another one of those like Division II quarterbacks. So we have 2 solid Division II quarterbacks, one who's transferred to kind of low level Division I, and then we have Brett Rippon, so it's a after Williams, it's a real mess, I think, behind. So I think the Packers and the Bears right now are the least impressive of any teams that we've talked about in terms of backups. Because usually there's at least one solid backup on a team. I don't think the Bears at least have four quarterbacks rather than just three for the Packers. But
Well, but yeah, but a combined 8 total NFL starts amongst the entire room that they have. So
yeah,
that's a little frightening. I mean,
yeah,
the advantage I guess that they have is that or like the saving grace of that is that they do have a number one overall pick coming in,
mhm,
but number one overall picks their first seasons have a very mixed bag of results, right? So it could be anything from injured in the first game to being okay, but maybe sacked 60 something times over the course of the year,
yeah,
or not so good. Somewhere in there, right? It's usually it's not what we saw last year in Houston. That is the outlier for rookie quarterbacks starting from day one. Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The way Stroud did it was very unusual. But
Yeah.
Stroud still had. We'll talk about s- you know backups who were more seasoned than
Hmm.
any of the Bears or the Packers backups.
Yeah.
Um, and as it turns out, also more seasoned than any of the Detroit Lions backups. Although at least in Detroit, you have a starter who has been there and done it for several years now. He's a veteran. Um, Detroit, of course, their starting quarterback is now one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Jared Goff, who is, still fairly young. He's only going to be 29 in October. Former number one overall pick by the Rams in 2016. He went to Cal. He was a Super Bowl losing quarterback for the Rams in 2018. Most notably traded to the Rams with draft picks from Matt Stafford and Goff, and those draft picks helped build the Lions into the team that they are today. Fairly smart, 36 on his Wonderlic, solid NFL quarterback, 185 touchdowns to 82 interceptions in his career. This is now his fourth season with Detroit. Um, he was passed for almost 4,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, only 12 interceptions, 98 quarterback rating. Last year, he's 66-50-1 as a starter, plus a 4-4 playoff record, 2-1 last year in the playoffs, I believe. He's got the look of a quarterback. He's tall, strong, good arm. He signed that big contract in the offseason. I think Goff maybe is Goff the best quarterback in the NFC right now? He's paid like it.
For sure in the division. Possibly in the NFC though. Yeah.
Well, you think
He's going to be up there.
Jordan Love
Well,
hasn't been
so
around long enough to.
his salary for this season isn't excessive. It doesn't balloon until 2026 season. So this year, his base salary is only 2.6 million, as the way his deal is structured, at least anyway. It's mostly signing bonus, restructure bonus, and then a roster bonus too. So like he's still getting paid 27 million this year in total, but his base salary is only 2.7 million. Not too bad, I guess.
No.
But it does balloon to 55 million and as a base salary in 2026, Mike. So and the option out isn't until after the 2027 season. So they're definitely by how uh, his salary is structured, they're expecting him to be the starter for several years before they have a choice, at least even for uh, you know, moving on.
Yeah, so I think, but it's hard. So Goff, solid quarterback, but behind Goff, we have a lot of question marks. But maybe we have at least we have we mentioned the Bears have 8 starts among them, uh, in among the backups. including the starter though, but among the backups. The Lions have 0 starts among their backups. They actually have,
Their
um,
starter has a lot of stuff.
yeah, the starter though has a lot of starts. So, but both, but the maybe the backup, we don't know who the backup's going to be. Maybe it's going to be Hendon Hooker, who's 26 years old now. So this is only his second year in the league. 6'3", third-round draft pick from Tennessee. He went to Virginia Tech, then Tennessee. He had 58 touchdowns to 5 interceptions his last 2 years. He also rushed for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns those years. But he injured his knee, was out all of last season. He spent last year on the IR. So, like, he was seen maybe as the quarterback of the future if Goff was gonna fade. So what do we do with him? He's already 26. Is he still the quarterback of the future? Is he just a kind of future backup? What is he? He's maybe competing for the backup role with Nate Sudfeld, who will be 31 in October, former 2016 6th-round pick by Washington, 6'6", so he's a big guy. He never played with Washington. He went to the Eagles for 4 years, then to San Francisco, then to Detroit in 22. He's never started a game in his career. He has a career 188 yards passing, so he's barely played. You know, I guess the other thing is that he also all of last year did not play. He tore his ACL in the preseason and missed all last year. So there's no quarterback played at all last year for the Lions and backups. So
Or even could play if the opportunity arose, right? Because they
yeah.
were, yeah, fully injured and out.
So the
Yeah.
question is, do you think Detroit needs another quarterback in that quarterback room? Although we have some age, at least some experience. Sudfeld, Hooker is the young guy, but he's already 20, he's a little long in the tooth already. Um, he's older than Jordan Love, who's been in the league for several years now. So it's an
You'd
interesting.
probably, as a team, you'd probably like to see somebody, if Goff were to go down, and maybe let there be somebody to maybe hand the reins to.
So, but maybe Hooker can be that because he had a lot of upside
Yeah,
coming out of college. I think he might
yeah.
have, had he not been injured, he might have been a first round pick. Um, so
But he might still want one of those other guys just to be there to, be in his ear while Goff
yeah,
is playing, just to say like, "Hey, watch him do this."
I guess that's what Sudfeld is for, but
Maybe that's what Sudfeld's supposed to do.
he
But yeah,
hasn't played enough maybe to be that
yeah.
guy though. He's been in enough film rooms probably, but yeah, he's barely done. Oh, Sudfeld is barely done anything. So it's another kind of odd situation where we have a lot of inexperience, and that's the NFC North is a little. I think it's the weirdest division when it
Yeah.
comes to the quarterback groupings. I think
Yeah. So
Minnesota
the
without,
gap between the one and the two is like a chasm and not a.
and then there's no 3 or 4 really. They're all about the same, and so it's like it's.
Yeah.
I think in some ways Detroit, because Hooker was seen as a really top prospect until he got hurt, maybe is the best. But in some ways, but I think Goff though exceeded expectations for the Lions, and they weren't expecting to pay him so much, but he's been pretty good. And I think they thought, well, we'll ride Goff for another couple of years, and then we'll give it to Hooker. But now it looks like Goff's still fairly. He's only 3 years older than Hooker. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, it's a two
But
and a
that
half.
contract, the way it's set up, it seems like it would be you're not like you want Goff to start, and it's like it's basically Hooker is into becoming like an insurance policy as a
Yeah.
potential replacement should Goff get injured. But if he just ability wise falls off a cliff, then they're just gonna have to eat it basically, and
And maybe if Hooker
uh,
does well, you can trade Hooker in the next year or two for prospects or for draft picks.
where you can draft another quarterback in like a year or two. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. But yeah,
yeah.
that's the NFC North for you. Yeah. Shall we move on to the
Well, so
NFC?
based on what you've seen here, you have an expectation for what who's going to be good, who's going to be not so good in the injury scenario, which seems to strike almost every team.
I think if
Where are these teams going to fall out?
I think if they stay healthy, it's a Green Bay and Detroit division. I actually like Green Bay a little better than Detroit. I think Detroit maybe played over
Wow.
their heads last year. Um,
This is a
so
huge turnaround for
it
you.
is, it is.
I'm shocked on the
I like
Detroit
because I like
Club
Green Bay's
turnaround
defense.
and then the full on Green Bay
Their
turnaround too.
running game, they have also a lot of young wide receivers that are very good. The Lions have, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but they also have they seem very top heavy. They've paid a bunch of money to a few people, and if any
Yeah.
of those people go down, they don't. I don't think they have the. I don't think they quite have the depth that Green Bay does. So I think Detroit um, got a little lucky in some of their games against the Chiefs, especially the first game, and some of their playoffs. I thought they could have lost a couple of those home games in the playoffs. So so I'm not, and they're also going to be they're heavily favored this year. So I don't know how well they'll handle that pressure. So I'm looking actually for them. I think they might make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last year. And I think the Packers are going to be better. So that's my guess. But
Oh,
if they get hurt, I think if quarterbacks go down, I think the Vikings might be in the best shape of those teams, and then the Vikings might be a I don't know 7-10 team,
yeah.
but if they play quarterbackless teams in their division, maybe they can be 10-7.
Yeah. It's a fine line, right? Between 7-10 and 10-7 season,
Yeah,
because of the division itself. Like
yeah,
if it's bad, then somebody's probably gonna walk through it. If there are two teams that emerge as being good, like you expect with Green Bay and Detroit, then they may walk through the end, or they could just beat each other up, and everybody's 2-2 early on, and yeah, I don't know. Who knows, really? This season, trying to predict it now is kind of silly, but we will though, right? Are we going to do our season long over under win totals?
yeah. We have to. Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we need to.
Well,
We need to redeem ourselves from last year's
yeah. Last year we were way
performance.
off. It was bad.
Yeah,
But part of it was I think the Chiefs being woefully underperforming, but then they win the Super Bowl, but even though they were under their winning
yeah,
total. So I think we both predicted the Chiefs to be, I think this year we both think that the Chiefs look better as on paper than they did last year. Uh,
yeah,
but it doesn't mean they'll win the Super Bowl again, even if they might be a better team. So
yeah.
speaking of teams that look really good on paper, we have the NFC East, the Dallas Cowboys are the furthest west team easily
By
in the
far, yes. Further
uh,
west than most of the North.
further west than any of the NFC North teams.
All of the North, yes.
Yeah, and I believe all of the NFC South teams they're further
Yeah,
west than so.
yeah,
And they
true.
were further west than some of the West teams before St. Louis moved back to Los Angeles. But um, the Dallas Cowboys, they have basically the same three quarterbacks that were in the quarterback room last year. Uh, Dak Prescott, their starter, who was looking for a deal like Jared Goff or what Jordan Love got, those big 50 million plus deals. But Jerry Jones is not really happy with anybody. It doesn't seem like he hasn't been paying anybody on the Cowboys. The Cowboys are one of those teams that maybe he's waiting for them to be really good next year and then he'll pay people, or if they'll just implode and he'll just rebuild the team. I don't know. He's old, so I don't know if he can live through a rebuild. But Dak Prescott now is 31. He was a fourth round pick from Mississippi State back in 2016, the NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year that year. He's been the quarterback since his rookie year when Tony Romo was injured most of the season, then retired. Um, he's 73-41 as a starter. Um, a 2-5 playoff record, though, however. Um, he's mobile, but he runs less than he has in recent years. Big year last year, 36 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 4,500 yards, 106 quarterback rating, 70% completion percentage. But he did miss time though 2 of the previous 3 seasons. So, is he injury prone? That's maybe another question. He might even be the best quarterback in the conference. It's hard to say with Prescott, but he's not seen as elite probably among the league. He's not Mahomes or Burrow or Allen or Jackson or uh, any of those guys. But you know, maybe.
but he does have relatively on par numbers.
Yeah, he puts
But
up big.
isn't seen as a a top tier quarterback, even though his numbers probably do justify
Yeah,
that that comparison.
but yeah, it's playoff success a lot, I think, is a lot of it. And whether it's Dak's fault or the Cowboys in general fault, but yeah, he hasn't been good in the playoffs. Um, just like, well, the Cowboys got blown out by the Packers last year. Prescott didn't have a terrible game, but the offense was so overwhelmed already from the beginning. They couldn't really. They scored 30 plus points, I think, against the Packers, but the Packers was a 48-32 win or something like that. So they were way ahead the whole game. So it didn't really matter.
But really, if you remember back to earlier games in Dallas this season, like they were really reliant on that, spectacular defensive individual plays that almost always resulted in touchdowns.
Yeah, big play
Uh,
defense. Yeah.
so it's if they had that show up in the playoff game, then that score may have been completely flipped, and we'd be talking about how great they were in the playoffs, as opposed to
Mhm.
how much they collapsed in the playoffs
Yeah,
instead.
you can't, I guess, count on big plays, big play defense.
Yeah.
That's one reason why the Chiefs defense, which was less spectacular than the Cowboys, but it was better because it didn't rely on those big plays. Like if you get those big plays, it would really be helpful. But the Chiefs never gave up more than 27, 28 points the entire season,
Yeah.
including the playoffs. And so they were a top scoring defense, but they didn't need to. They sacked. They got a lot of sacks. They got a lot of pressures, but they didn't get a ton of interceptions. They didn't get a ton of touchdowns, but they were
Yeah.
kind of solid, but maybe not have these spectacular highs like the Cowboys defense did. They didn't have
They
Michael.
seem to focus more about like, knocking passes down than necessarily like reeling them in too for the interception. So yeah,
Yeah,
they didn't get like a lot of the turnovers
yeah,
that Dallas did to get and resulted in a lot of touchdowns.
yeah. But that was all. But it turns out that's what they relied on in a lot of the games, and if that dries
Relying.
out, that hurts your team. If you don't have if you don't just have a overall just solid defense without those big plays. Um, but Prescott, it turns out, but in terms of quarterbacks, it seems like Dallas has a lot of good options because if Prescott goes down, they have Cooper Rush, who's their backup, who's now 30 years old, undrafted free agent in 2017 from Central Michigan. He's been with the Cowboys since then, other than a short stint in 2020 on the Giants practice squad. He started 5 games 2 years ago. 1,619 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, a 5-1 record as a starter. He's 6'3". Some liked him better than Dak in 2022, even though he's not as good. But he won games for the Cowboys that year. He barely played this past year because Prescott stayed healthy. But the question is he the number 2 quarterback, or does he get passed by the number 3 guy, who's been a up and coming, seen as a hot prospect, at least he was in the first couple years of his career. That's Trey Lance, who's still only 24 years old. So he's 2 years younger than Hendon Hooker, who hasn't even played yet, and he's uh, only a year older than Caleb Williams. He's uh, younger than Jordan Love. He's still very young. He was the number 3 overall pick out of North Dakota State. He only had 1 year as a starter, and he threw 28 touchdowns to 0 interceptions that year in Division One AA. But 1,100 yards rushing that season as well, 14 touchdowns in the FCS competition. And San Francisco actually exchanged 3 first-round picks to get the first-round pick from Miami to get him, and a third-round pick. So they gave up a lot to have him. And when they traded him to Dallas this past year because he couldn't find a spot in San Francisco with Purdy becoming the new starter, they only got a 4th-round pick in return for him. So that's two first, giving away 2 extra firsts and a third, and then only getting a 4th for him. That's a big swing.
Yeah.
He hasn't played much. He hasn't played much since 2019, really, because he didn't play in the COVID season. He didn't play much as a rookie. He's been hurt a lot. He's only had 4 starts 2-2 careers as starters. Injury eventually led the way to Purdy becoming the starter after Garoppolo was hurt, after Lance was hurt. He's developmental. Is he turning a corner? Is he a bust? We don't really know. He was compared to Mahomes at one point. He's still only 24. So is this why Prescott isn't getting the big contract? Because maybe they think Lance could be something in the future, could be something cheap compared to Prescott, and they can spend money elsewhere. I don't know. But it seems like at least the Cowboys have backups that can play and a project
Yeah.
as well. So I think they're in much better shape, if Prescott goes down than a lot of the NFC North teams are if their starter goes down.
And this is Prescott's balloon year of his contract too. This is the final year of his 4-year deal. So he is getting paid 55 million this season.
Ooh.
That is the kind of contract that you would sort of expect to see, have it be extended and then spread out across a couple of years rather than pay the 55 million in the single season. Not having not having him under contract for the next year or with an option of any kind even. So this is like, contract wise, this is the end of his deal. So if he wants to try to stay in Dallas, is going to have a huge year and make sure to put everybody else away, basically as being a threat to him. So uh, more likely though, he's probably going to be moving on. So he'd still be playing for where he's going to go next, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it seems like they aren't going to keep him around. If they haven't
Yeah.
extended him yet, unless he does really, really well this season and they're forced to keep him. So if he wins the Super Bowl, they're not going to let him go. But if he, another playoff
I
out, he's
don't
not.
know that's a guarantee, actually. Jerry Jones does whatever he feels like.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you never know. You never know.
yeah.
But there's
Yeah, so
he's
but Lance isn't inexpensive though, he's still on the end of his rookie deal, so he is getting paid a sizable roster bonus this year. So he's getting $5.3 million, which isn't nothing anyway, but it is for a backup quarterback, it is
how much did
relatively
you say?
high. 5 million.
5 million? Yeah. So I would say maybe they would think, well, maybe they can get him cheap if they sign him to the future. If he doesn't, maybe they can get him for 10 or 15 million a year as
Yeah.
starter in case of, if Prescott moves
As
on.
long
So
as he stays healthy and is at least mediocre, then yeah, I mean that's still a huge savings in salary to what Prescott would
he's
be
younger,
paid.
he runs. Yeah, that's I don't, but but Lance hasn't shown anything though, so he's barely played,
Yeah.
so it's hard to say.
He
Um,
definitely hasn't shown that he's healthy enough to stay on the field for a
he's had a lot of bad luck.
sizable portion of the
Yeah,
season.
yeah.
Yeah. And Rush isn't cheap either, really, as a backup. So he's at 2.9 million for this season. Uh, so their combined only three quarterback room still is this number two overall by salary quarterback
Hmm.
grouping in the NFL. 63.3 million combined for just the three
63.3.
QBs.
Have we discussed who the number one?
We mentioned them last week, but we have not done our in-depth analysis of. Do you know who it is still?
Is it is it the Bengals?
No, but you're in the
Oh.
right state.
Oh, the Browns. Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. So
Uh,
Deshaun Watson himself actually makes more than the number two team is paying all of their quarterbacks combined
wow.
this
He's making
season.
60 something million this year.
63.8 million,
Wow.
Deshaun Watson.
Wow. That's a balloon year. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of, we'll move on to the NFC East to a team that actually has no quarterbacks from last year on their roster this year, and that's the Washington Commanders. Uh, none of the, yeah, they have all new quarterbacks. They have four quarterbacks on the roster, but none of them have played at all down for the Commanders or for the former Redskins or any of the former the football team, any of the Washington names. They most notably drafted the Heisman Trophy winner from 2023, number two overall from LSU was Jaden Daniels. He's 23. He'll be 24 in December. He's the number 2 overall pick. He played for LSU, Arizona State before transferring to LSU. He's 6'4". He's sort of maybe the next, he's compared to Mahomes. Is he Lamar Jackson? Is he Cam Newton? He's got all these kind of running quarterback, Jalen Hurts, RG. But I guess the question is he going to be RG3, the star-crossed, brilliant running quarterback for Washington when he was drafted. But his Heisman Trophy season, he threw for 40 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, 3,800 passing yards. He also rushed for over 1,100 yards, 10 rushing touchdowns. So he had a huge, huge season. He set the FBS passer rating record at 208, which is a different calculation than the NFL uses. But huge upside, running quarterback compared to Mahomes, of course. Is he the next, maybe better passer than Lamar Jackson, but running as nearly as good? Jalen Hurts, somebody like that. He's up on that level. But the question is, will he be able to stay healthy in the NFL? He won't be able to run quite as much. Maybe he's Josh Allen. Maybe we can withstand a lot of those hits. But Jane Daniels has already actually been named the starter for the first preseason game, so he's not going to sit, it seems like, on the bench to start the season. He's probably going to start coming out.
But starting the first preseason game isn't necessarily meaning the starter,
I
but
guess not, but he's got the first team
he
reps,
would
I
be
guess.
playing with the first team. Yeah, because the Bears didn't start most of their first team guys at all, really, in the Hall of Fame game. So it's not necessarily written in stone, but it's at least looks like that's what they're leaning towards.
Yeah.
It may not make the most sense though either, would you think?
I don't know. I think maybe they should start Marcus Mariota, their other Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. He's 30. He's only 30. He's 6'4", like Daniels. Um, he'll be 31 around Halloween. 2014 winner of the Heisman from Oregon as the best college player, of course. Also a former number 2 overall pick. This was by Tennessee in 2015. Since 2020, though, he's played for the Raiders, the Falcons, the Eagles, and now this is his first season in Washington. His last season as a starter was 2022 in Atlanta. It was the only time as a starter, really, that since he had left Tennessee when he was supplanted by Ryan Tannehill. Career
Wasn't he,
34.
wasn't he supposed to be the starter with the Raiders?
He was behind Carr. He was thought to challenge Carr with the Raiders, but Carr ended up being the starter, and Mariota never saw the field.
Was that the year that he had the punctured lung, or what wasn't
I think
that?
you're thinking of Tyrod Taylor.
Oh, maybe that was Taylor. Maybe that's who I was thinking of.
Yeah, who
Okay.
was supposed to start over young what's his name? The Chargers quarterback.
Oh, Justin Herbert.
Justin
Was it
Herbert,
that?
yeah. He was
Yeah.
supposed to start over
Oh,
Herbert.
that
And then
was.
and then
Oh,
he
that
got that
was.
injection and it punctured his lung. And
That's it. That's right. That was.
just
That is who
yeah,
I'm thinking of. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But Mariota, he was
The
thought maybe to
interdivision,
challenge
teams that I get confused sometimes, apparently.
this futile AFC West opponents of the Chiefs. Yeah,
Yes.
it was that same time period. Um,
Yes.
But yeah, 34 and 40 as a starter, but 93 touchdowns to 55 interceptions, and actually an 89.2 career rating, which is higher than I would have guessed. He's still fairly mobile. He ran for over 400 yards with Atlanta. The question I actually asked this before we found out today that Jane Daniels is going to be the starter. It seems like is he the starter to start the season, or is he already the backup? It seems like maybe he's already the backup, unless maybe Daniels takes a step back in the preseason. But I might start Mariota. Again, this is a division. This is a team that the Commanders, you probably won't challenge for the division and probably isn't a playoff team this year. This is a team that you build. But, I guess they started the number 2 pick last year with, um, CJ Stroud in Houston, and look what happened with them. So maybe Washington feels like this can be another CJ Stroud. Maybe Jaden Daniels is actually the best quarterback of the draft class above Caleb Williams. Who knows? But he had, the year last year that rivaled just about anybody. So behind Mariota and Daniels, we have a couple of guys. Jeff Driscoll, 31 years old, former sixth-round pick by the 49ers out of Louisiana Tech. He also played a little bit at Florida. Driscoll played at Cincinnati in 2018. He started 5 games as a rookie. He then went to Detroit, Denver, Arizona, Cleveland, and now Washington. He actually was traded from Arizona to Cleveland, or went from Arizona to Cleveland, that same trade that took Dobbs from Cleveland to Arizona last year. He started 1 game last year for Cleveland. In his career, he's 1-11 as a starter, but he's got 16 touchdowns and only 10 interceptions, 79.4 rating. So his maybe rating seems a little better than his starting career. We have a guest joining us. Who's that cat?
That was a Bubzo.
Bubzo, the cat. If you're listening to us on the podcast, you didn't see Bubzo the cat walk across Andrew's screen there. Of course,
Sniff
he's
my
thinking,
face, and then before turning around and jumping out. So yes,
he's thinking
great.
that it's very, very late at night. We should be finishing with these things. It's my time to prowl across the desks and tables of the Doran household. But
Exactly.
so Driscoll, you can play in a pinch. He's probably the third quarterback, or maybe they'll go with another developmental player in Sam Hartman, 6'1", but he's also from undrafted free agent from Notre Dame. He was also a starter for many years at Wake Forest before that. 9-3 as a starter at Notre Dame, 24 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, almost 3,000 yards passing. He threw for even more yards and more touchdowns at Wake Forest, which had a more open offense than Notre Dame, which had a more conservative offense. But solid college quarterback for several years. Maybe he is somebody that could be a developmental player as well. So Washington, at least, it seems like even if they start Daniels above Mariota, they have a solid room. It seems like they have a mixture of veteran presence. They have some young guys with upside. They have, just if bodies to throw at the situation if it's called for. So they seem like, in Dan Quinn's first year as a coach, they're in much better shape, I think, if somebody goes down with an injury than, many of those NFC Northern Division counterparts.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah,
think
and it's nice to see, like, they're giving the opportunity for, at least for the young player to just kind of take the role rather than being given it then necessarily. So hopefully that's the kind of route they're going to take, though, too, is that
yeah.
if he wins the job, then he will be the opening day starter, hopefully.
Hmm.
But if he doesn't, then it seems like they're covered, right? So they're
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they're hoping to not like set up another sequence of events where they have their rookie quarterback getting sacked like 60 times, like Howell was last year, right? Somewhere in that area.
Hmm. Yeah, 65 times I think he was sacked in
Jeez.
17 games, almost 4. Yeah. Um, but they have a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, new everything, and 4 new quarterbacks now. But they actually have 4, 3 quarterbacks you could say that are 1 in Daniels and 2 in Mariota and Driscoll that actually have some experience.
Mm.
And then you have a young guy in Hartman, so if no, a 4th guy that can go on the practice squad. So I think that's looking good for Washington.
And they do have
Um,
a solid running game too with Brian Robinson, and apparently I didn't even remember that they had done this, but they also brought an Austin Eckler in. So
oh,
they've
okay,
got
yeah,
you
receiving
know,
out of the backfield, yeah, third
yeah, they've
down
got
guy.
some solid players there anyway. Salary
Yeah.
wise, I was a little surprised. Yeah, Jaden Daniels will be the highest paid quarterback over Mariota,
Okay,
actually. So he'll get 6.9 million this year. Mariota's at 6. Driscoll's just under a million, and Sam Hartman's closer to the league minimum, 800,000.
okay. Yeah, so it's a solid room. I think they're the next team we'll talk about also has a pretty good quarterback room, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
So far, though, do you think Washington has the best, like overall, like top to bottom room that we've talked about so far today, anyway?
You might say that even though they only have three, you might say the Cowboys, simply because they have Prescott at the top, who's proven, and then you
Yeah.
could say Lance is still. But I maybe with four, the Cowboys, you could say. I mean, I'm with the Commanders, you could say maybe is the best, but we don't know what their top is. I guess if it's Mariota at the top, we know kind of that's not maybe a whole lot different than the Vikings quarterback room uh either. So, but I think of the ones we've talked about so far, we have the Vikings, the Cowboys, and the Commanders as the top three out of those six, and then I think we'd include the Eagles as as a decent one as well.
Yeah.
Um, we have some younger guys, starting, some younger guys now that have some experience as well. Of course, starting with Jalen Hurts, 26 years old, second round pick from Oklahoma in 2020. Of course, he started at Alabama, where he was supplanted by Tua Tagovailoa. Great season at OU in 2019, made him a real NFL prospect. 6'1", a little shorter, but he's stocky. He's 220 plus pounds. Solid runner, decent passer. Breakout season in 22, where he led the Eagles to the Super Bowl. Um, he had a decent year last year in terms of statistics, but he threw 23 touchdowns. In 2023, he only threw 22 in 2022, but he also threw 15 interceptions, which was far more than the six he threw the year before. He rushed for 15 more touchdowns, 600 plus rushing yards. So, has he peaked, or can he get better? It seems like after he signed that big contract, he didn't take a step forward last year. He kind of was treading water, or maybe took a little step backwards. So, um, the Eagles have a history of Super Bowl losing quarterbacks recently, being very good, at least it seems like, and then maybe not seeming so good in future seasons, or injury prone in future seasons, like what they had with Carson Wentz a couple of years ago. So, um, is that
Especially because it was Nick Foles that actually won the Super Bowl, right?
Nick Foles won the Super Bowl? Yeah, yeah, it was Nick Foles who won. I guess
Yeah.
Carson Wentz didn't lose the Super Bowl. He just didn't play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Foles won.
I mean, he got them, to the playoffs
Yeah, he had a great year that
and
year.
yeah. I don't they wouldn't have had that run without
Wentz
Wentz
playing
in the
for one,
regular
yeah.
season. So yeah.
MVP level season about,
Yeah.
yeah, in 2017. So, but yeah, this is Hurts is a really solid quarterback. Again, the question is, will he get hurt? No pun intended, because of the way his style of play. Uh,
Mhm.
but there are some but if Hurts goes down, there are, at least it seems like there's some backups that are possibilities, that are going to be able to hold down the fort while he's out. So it's better position than the Packers or the Lions or the uh, Bears will be. But it seems like maybe the backup will be Kenny Pickett, uh, who was traded to Philly in March with a fourth round pick by Pittsburgh, who actually picked up a third and 2/7. So they really didn't get much for Pickett. They gave up a fourth in Pickett for a third rounder and two seventh round picks. So he was expendable after picking up Russell Wilson, and then really, really expendable after picking up Justin Fields. But they got Fields after they got rid of Pickett. Um, so Pickett goes across the state from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. Last year, he started 12 games for Pittsburgh, but his stats were fairly underwhelming. He did have a 7-5 record this year, and the previous year he actually had a 7-5 record too. So he's 12-10 as a starter. But last season he threw for only 2,070 yards, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 81.4 rating. So he didn't really fill up the stat sheet a whole lot over those games. But he wasn't the worst quarterback, but he wasn't. I think the Steelers wanted more upside. I think he wanted a change of scenery, and I think the Eagles wanted a backup that could, play in a somewhat similar vein to Hurts, and that's kind of what Pickett uh, does. The other backups are kind of interesting, I think, for the Eagles. The most interesting, I think, is Will Greer, who's now 29 years old, 6'3", a former third-round pick from West Virginia in 2019 by Carolina. He started his first 2 years in Carolina, his first 2 years were with Carolina. Then he went to Dallas for a couple of years. Then the Bengals, Patriots, Chargers practice squads last year. He started 2 games as a rookie, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He hasn't actually played an NFL snap since 2019, but he was a solid college quarterback. He actually had a huge preseason game last year for the Cowboys where he threw like 5 touchdowns, 300 something plus yards. Everybody really was excited, but then he got cut. So the question might be, does he have a chance to sneak in as a backup if Pickett struggles? And it seems like maybe Pickett hasn't done so great in camp this year so far. So maybe you have Will Grier as the backup. Maybe he can be a Gardner Minshew type or somebody like that can sling the ball a little bit. Fourth quarterback is Tanner McKee, 24 years old, 6th-round draft pick from Stanford last year. He actually had a terrible record in college as a starter, only 6-16. No mobility to speak of, 28 career touchdowns to 15 interceptions. He is really tall, though, 6'6", probably why he was drafted. Practice squad last year. Does he stick around or get cut? Does he fall in the practice squad again? That's the question. But he's at least a developmental kind of body to have in camp. And at least the Eagles, it seems like they have several options behind Hurts, maybe not quite as strong as some other teams, but Pickett has been a starter. Will Grier has some interesting upside as a backup. So I think, at least the Eagles have, or they're trying, they have a decent, unit behind Hurts.
And still pretty economical, salary wise for Hurts too. He's only going to make 13.6 million this year. He does have a big contract though. It is a 5-year, $255 million deal. And we're just in year 2 of that. So he does have a little bit of ballooning, but a lot of his looks like a lot of the way this salary is structured though, it's a lot of option, prorated option, I guess, spread across all the years. So 13.6 this year, 22 million next year, 32 million the following year, 42 million in the last year of the deal, 27. And then there's another option year apparently after that at 47 million. So it does go up, but it's not like the balloon payment type thing that you see with some of the other teams. So Philly's quarterback room isn't absurdly expensive by any means. Jalen Hurts at only 13.6. Yeah. Pickett's only going to make 2 million. Will Greer's at just under 1 million. Tanner McKee's just a little bit below that even too. So it's not a super expensive team anyway there.
Yeah.
Uh, and they have some interesting players coming in too, especially because they have Saquon Barkley coming from the Giants over as a running back, and they didn't have to give up Gainwell either, so he's still there. Their wide receivers are still there.
Mm-hmm.
Devontae Smith, AJ Brown. So they're still have a pretty stacked team. So like they don't really necessarily need a quarterback to
And they
do all kinds of stuff. Like maybe Jalen Hurts won't have to run quite so much. I mean, solid running backs like that, maybe he can actually manage to not get injured then because of that. So hopefully that's the kind of thing the team is hoping for, I would assume.
they should have a solid defense this year. They got 2 highly drafted. They had problems in the secondary last year, and they got 2 very highly drafted cornerback safeties in the first and second round. So I think they'll be, I think they're in good shape if Hurts can play as well, maybe as people hope. You mentioned the Giants with Saquon Barkley. That's our final team of the night, final team in the NFC. It's been a marathon that we've had tonight, but we'll end it in New York, home of one of the great marathons of the world, but maybe not home of one of the great football teams of the world. They did make a surprising playoff run 2 years ago under Brian Dable, but I think they're slated at number 3 in the division at the highest right now, maybe even number 4, because we seem to like the Commanders' upside a little bit more than we like what's going on in G-Man land in East Rutherford, New Jersey. But we have the Giants, their starting quarterback, is Daniel Jones. He's 27 years old, former first-round pick in 2019 from Duke, 6'5", 3-year starter in college, but didn't have great stats. He was seen as a kind of a project and a projectable quarterback when he was drafted. Career in New York, he has 52 touchdown passes, 29 interceptions, 8,200 yards passing. He's mobile. He looks like a quarterback. He did much better under Brian Dable than he did under the predecessor, but his stats haven't been that much. Last year, he only played 6 games. He's 1-5, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Even in his kind of breakout season the year before, he only threw for 15 touchdown passes. A little bit like Kenny Pickett, kind of those low, he doesn't fill up the stat sheet. Maybe but he's getting paid like he's not Kenny Pickett. He's getting paid like he's Jalen Hurts almost. He's making
So it's basically the same contract that Dak Prescott had just a year later.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a really similar deal. 4 years, 160 million. Yeah, but he's only in year two, and there is an option after this year. So
Think maybe that would be the
there's an
last year
out.
of Daniels. But you thought maybe they would draft a quarterback this year, and they did not. If they thought that Jones was not the answer, they did bring in another quarterback, Drew Lock, also 27 years old. He'll be 28 in November. All 6'4", Elise Summit, Missouri native. Um, Broncos second round pick in 2019. He was then traded to Seattle as part of the Russell Wilson deal. That didn't really work out for the Broncos. He was 9-14 as a starter. All but 2 of those were with Denver. He didn't play a snap in 2022 after losing the camp battle with Geno Smith, but he did start 2 games last year when Smith was injured. He was 1-1, 534 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions last year. Career 28 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. So he started some with Denver. Maybe he might think he's competing for the starting job here in New York. I don't think he really is, but he's somebody that can maybe be if Daniel Jones goes down, he's injured. He's been injured quite a bit. He can. Drew Lock isn't really probably much of a step down. He's maybe not quite as explosive as Jones in some ways, but he might be a better passer than Jones, not in other ways. So they're kind of similar quarterbacks. Both I think were thought to be maybe starter, high level starters of the future, but neither one really has panned out so far. And behind those two, we have Dr. Scaff's favorite quarterback, Tommy DeVito. Tommy Cutlets, as he's known because of his love for his mother's Italian cooking and her chicken cutlets, especially. He's 26. Actually, he'll be 26 on August 7th, which actually is today. This is his birthday. As we've gone past midnight here at Warren Trick Power Hour in our recording studio. He was a rookie last year. He played at Syracuse in college, then transferred to Illinois. Undrafted free agent in 2023. He was a Jersey guy. He's 6'2". He was thrust into duty last year after Jones and Tyrod Taylor had injuries last year. He ended up starting 6 games for the Giants. 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 1,100 yards passing, 89.2 rating. Does he compete for the number 2 job? Because he actually did a pretty good job while he was quarterback, and he's a fan favorite. So maybe the Giants are one of those teams where it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is. They aren't going to be great either way. So if one goes down, maybe the Giants are in decent position to go with their backups. But that's the Giants quarterback room. What do you have to say about the G-men?
For as mediocre as I think that the quarterbacks are, some of them are getting paid a lot this year though. So Daniel Jones is getting paid $48 million this season, like top tier money
Hmm.
for not that many starts or that much history. And Tommy DeVito at 915K may actually be the fan favorite. So like they may actually prefer to see him most of the time, even. At least for the humorous like memes that come out of it anyway, over the Tommy Cutlets kind of type stuff. Drew Lock still is making 5 million this year. Does that surprise you that still a $5 million quarterback?
Well, I guess he's being paid to be a top backup, kind of borderline starter, and that seems to be maybe what's going what the rate is right now. That's what Mariota.
Or is that just like New York? That's the New York rate for
Yeah,
a
maybe it's
backup
New York
quarterback.
inflation, but I don't know how they're getting DeVito for so cheap. But I guess it's just rookie salary deal. Um,
Yeah, he's still a rookie, so he probably doesn't have much of a say in it at this point.
yeah, I guess
I mean,
Lock.
the
Yeah,
Giants are the number 3 team by quarterback salaries combined
oh wow.
in the league, right behind. Well, they're behind Dallas, but there's a $10 million gap between 2 and 3.
And then there's a big gap between 1 and 2 then too.
Only four and a
Only
half million.
only 4.5.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but then it's a $10 million gap between 2 and 3.
Okay. So yeah, I don't think we talked before. Does quarterback salary correlate with team success? And it seems like again so far not really. We think Dallas is going to be pretty
Yeah.
good, but we don't think the Giants are going to be very good. How are the Eagles ranked in that?
The Eagles are just barely below the halfway point. So they're number 17. But only 17.5 million though for
That'll balloon, I guess, in the next couple of years when Hertz's money
it
goes.
goes up a bit next year, a little more the following year. But yeah, I mean, if the Giants pick up uh Daniel Jones' salary, it's only, going to stay there to go higher then too. So it's kind of interesting. But
I can't see them
yeah,
doing
and then
unless
Dallas
Johnson
is going to be in
year.
a similar situation. If they decide to pay Prescott, then they're going to stay up in that top 5 for sure. If they don't decide to extend his contract, they may still stay up there because they may end up giving, Lance or some another different quarterback, a similar contract to what Dak had anyway. So they're probably not going to be cheap anyway.
No, not for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Any guess as to what team you think is going to come out on top then in the NFC East?
I think it's kind of a two team race again. We have the Eagles or the Cowboys. I think maybe the Eagles because it seems like the Cowboys haven't didn't do a whole lot in the offseason because they didn't extend their guys. They also didn't get a lot of free agents either. So I would say I like the Eagles' chances. I think the Eagles maybe underachieved some last year too. So I think they can probably bounce back some, unless they're on a downward slope, and I don't see it. But I think
It doesn't look like it on paper anyway.
yeah, I think the Eagles will bounce back. I like the Eagles ahead of the Cowboys, but I think both of those they probably those are probably the two playoff teams.
It sort of followed the model of the, team that loses the Super Bowl tends to have a dip next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the following year, I don't know that there's really a trend for what happens 2 years after a team,
Mhm.
uh, you know, doesn't win a Super Bowl. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that doesn't seem to be, there's not like they keep getting worse things. It's
Mhm.
like so much can happen in 2 seasons rather than one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know what will happen in the NFC East, but I think we can. It seems like we would both be surprised if the Giants make the playoffs, or if I would actually be less surprised if the Commanders made the playoffs than if the Giants made the playoffs. Because at least with Jaden Daniels, he's an unknown, and he might be really good. Same thing with the Bears. Maybe Caleb Williams is going to be really good, and the Bears are going to make the playoffs. But I think we know that. I think we know what we have with Daniel Jones, uh,
Mhm.
and so I think we know what we have. Also, probably with Drew Lock at this point. So I'd be surprised, especially given the competition in the division. Unless there's a lot of injuries, maybe if Prescott goes down, maybe if Hurts goes down. But still, those teams at least have decent backups that could maybe keep things in order and strong, um, you know, other position players on the team. So it's hard to say. But I like the Eagles' chances a little better than the Cowboys. How about you? Do you have the same
It
opinion?
seems like, yeah, the Eagles are out front, at least anyway. The Cowboys always seem to like have either an injury problem or they have some kind of collapse, basically. So I wouldn't, yeah, bet heavily on Dallas, but if they do well, it's like, oh, it's because they should, because they're built as a team that should win, and they just don't seem to be able to. So there's no reason that you should really back that if you're like trying to make bets on them, at least anyway. So
Yeah.
teams like Philly is a much safer that's what you would expect to be at least a good team anyway.
Hmm.
On a side note, the White Sox did manage to win their game tonight. They did break their 21 game losing streak. That is
Okay.
over. It is only blue skies from here, Mike.
Now they're going on a 21 game winning streak, and none of those wins will be against the Royals because the Royals were already finished playing.
Yeah.
Which so maybe the White Sox, the best case scenario is that the White Sox do go on a bit of a tear and start beating up the
Yes.
other teams in the division that the Royals have, and maybe help the Royals come back, catch up to Minnesota, catch up to Cleveland, and then they're only 5.5 games out of the division right now, so they might not even need the wild card. Maybe they can win the division.
Just need the White Sox to beat up on the Guardians. Yeah?
Yeah,
That's it. That's all we're
yeah,
asking for.
that'll happen. That'll happen. That's for sure. Uh, but what will happen is that we're going to be back next week with another exciting round of our NFL quarterback preview and some Olympics review and some more Royals and Chiefs coverage. Do you have anything else to add, Dr. Scap, before we
I
sign
think I
off?
think our I think our marathon has come to its conclusion.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful race. We've gone all across the country, and we've really seen the sights here in many of our great cities in America. And we hope you enjoyed this trip across the quarterback rooms of the NFC North and the NFC East. And we'll come back next week with our beginning of our AFC preview with two more divisions to come up next week. So until that time, enjoy the rest of the Olympics and enjoy the preseason, which is now kind of underway, which we'll have some preseason games to talk about. Maybe we can talk about the Chiefs preseason game next time. And we'll have, of course, more
Chiefs
baseball.
versus Jacksonville?
Is it? I don't even remember.
Is that who it is? That's what I thought it was, but I'm not. I
You're
could be
probably
wrong.
right. I didn't even, yeah.
It
I mean,
doesn't. It really doesn't actually matter.
it's also very late at night and I'm a little tired. So I don't remember what uh, actually has, what's been scheduled in the
At
preseason.
Jacksonville,
At
Saturday, 6
Jacksonville.
p.m. Central.
6 p.m. Central, Saturday at Jacksonville. Okay, so we'll see a rematch of the 2022 wild card game in which Mahomes was injured and came back and played very, very well when his ankle was hurt. So hopefully that doesn't happen this game. Hopefully Mahomes, if he plays, only plays a slight amount and is healthy, and the first team offense does and defense both play well. But we'll find out next week. We can talk about that next week, and we'll talk about all these other sporting events next time. And until then, I am Dr. Michael Werman. He is Dr. Andrew Scaff. We are the Warning Track Power Hour. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast broadcasts available on many different platforms. And until next time, we'll wish you a good day.